If I didn't arm myself with hostility, if I let my defenses down, guilt would rush in. You needn't get so hot with me. And those were not my words anyway. It was AI who said, and he spoke in Marathi, as if he was quoting I's very words, though one never could be sure of anything with Ravi. She said it's as if we are nothing to her anymore. Her own mother, her uncle who did so much for her, we could all rot here for all she cares. I could not control the rage that suffused me. Such an old story, Jaya, Dada had said, surprised by my anger when I had heard from him, for the first time that Shanju Mama had paid for my college and hostel fees after Appa's death. What else could we do? You were so adamant about not staying in Ambagayon. There wasn't really enough money to pay for your stay in a hostel, and Shanju Mama offered so. Such an old story, why are you so upset about it? I had not been able to explain then to Dada, but the anger had been real. And even now, when I's barbed hint brought that old story back, I found myself overcome by the same inexplicable anger. I suppose she'd like me to abandon my husband and children, or maybe she'd like me to be abandoned by my husband like Kusum, so that I can go and stay with them for months. Peace, sister, peace. Aha, my food. Ravi got busy with his tomato omelet. In his usual finicky way, he began removing bits of green chilies from the omelet before eating it. This boy picks out even the mustard seeds from his food, Appa used to exclaim, half amused, half exasperated. I'd often wondered how a Shah could put up with his idiosyncrasies. He drove me crazy within a few minutes of our meeting. I was only telling you what's being said in Ambagayon. Don't take it out on me. You can do exactly what you want as far as I'm concerned. From Ravi's tone, I realized I'd responded exactly as he had wanted me to. He did this with AI and Vanitamami too, carrying tailies, insults, snide remarks from one to the other, inciting them to fresh quarrels, getting an artist's pleasure out of the unpleasant situations he had created. And at Ambagayon there were plenty of unpleasant situations now, even without Ravi. Since other Aji's death, Vanitamami had changed. She had become aggressive. It was astounding to see all that pent-up rage escaping, and AI seemed unable to cope with the metamorphosed Vanitamami. Her 20 years' domination in her brother's home was being questioned, and she was losing the battle. She was now desperately looking out for a place she could retreat to, and her 3 children were looking at one another fearfully, wondering, am I going to provide that refuge? Why can't it be you? Why does it have to be me? The hints fell most heavily on me, and from the corner I had been pushed into, I wanted to cry out, why does it have to be me? There was no point really in asking the question, for I knew the answer myself. It was simple, both Dada and Ravi had escaped, pinning me down to the position of responsibility. Ravi, of course, was fluid and irresponsible. I don't suppose anyone, not even AI who had once doted on him, had expected anything else from him. But Dada? Yes, they had had hopes of him. I myself would never have been able to imagine that he would escape so wholly. Now it was clear that he would never return. At first he had written saying, "We'll be back," though he had never said when. Each time he came back he told us, exploring possibilities. Often he wistfully confessed to me his desire for coming back home and settling down among all of you where I really belong. And yet he knew the truth that he would never return. Some time back he had written to me of his fear, his greatest fear, of dying suddenly like Appa, but worse than Appa because I will be so far away from everyone. What would we have done without the Kakas, Shanju Mama and all of them? I am constantly tormented by the thought, what will happen to Jita and the girls if I die here, leaving them alone? Now we all knew it. We had accepted the fact that Dada would not return. We counted him out. Perhaps Dada's changed attitude had made it easier for us to do this. The facade of sympathy and caring he had always put up was giving way. The charming smile with which he had beguiled people into imagining him a concerned and affectionate person had become rarer. After Dada's last visit, Vanitamami had said hesitantly, "Dinu has changed, hasn't he?" And then, "It's his wife, of course. She tries to keep him and the children away from us. Don't eat this and don't eat that," she kept telling the children when they were here, in English, as if we can't understand. And Dinu doesn't say a word to her. But the boy was always like that. He never quarreled with anyone. A simple boy. Dada simple. If he is only what he seems, he is that rare thing, a simple man with no complications or subtleties about him. But a man who has so successfully evaded any kind of involvement with people all his life cannot be that simple. I often thought of the way he had kept AI at a distance after Appa's death, when she had showed signs of leaning on him, and the way he had kept me at arm's length too, so that I had turned to Mohan. And Jita, why was she so tense and seemingly unhappy, forever swallowing tranquilizers? Certainly such a man could not be simple. Sometimes I thought maybe I'm bitter because he has escaped and I can't. Yes, it angered me, the way Dada and Ravi had opted out, leaving me behind. It frightened me the way AI clung to me these days. When I was with her, she behaved as if her world centered round me. She had become childishly possessive. She, who had never seemed to bother very much about my activities, was now prying, curious and resentful about any part of my life that took me away from her. I didn't know whether to be angry with her or to pity her for her childish outbursts. Anything, even a few words exchanged with Vanita Mommy, provoked her into such an outburst. It seemed to me such a waste. All that emotion I no longer needed, no longer wanted, poured onto me. When I had passionately wanted her love, she had ignored me and concentrated on her sons. Smarming! That had been Dada's word for her behavior, and the smarming had never been for me. When I got married, she had been unperturbed. There had been not even a pretense of tears when I had left home. Now, each time I came away, there was an explosion of grief. Perhaps it didn't last long, but as long as it lasted, it seemed real. Is Vanita Mommy really ill? Seems a bit moany, but she always was that. What exactly is wrong? The tea arrived, slopping into the saucers. Ravi pushed his plate away and began on his tea. I picked my cup out of the saucer and drops of the highly colored liquid splattered the table, my sorry. Some female complaint, I believe. Female complaint. I suppose the euphemism meant bleeding. Which meant, I guessed, considering Vanita Mommy's age, a suspicion of cancer. Even in my distress, the irony of it occurred to me. Vanita Mommy's uterus, having failed in its life-bearing purpose, was finally carrying death. Shanju Mama says it may be cancer. The doctor, you remember him, the pockmarked chap? Yes, I did. He was so ugly he could not be forgotten. Nothing could redeem the horror of his deeply pitted face, except I'd soon realized his behavior with the two old women, AI and Vanita Mommy. He seems almost sure of it. In fact, he suggested she get operated immediately, but Vanita Mommy refused. She's scared. Or maybe, he sniggered, she's holding on to her uterus, hopping even now she'll get a kid. Suddenly, I was furious. What did he know? What did he understand of women? Was it the Greeks who had said that a woman is her womb? I had laughed when I had read that. But can any woman deny the link? Those painful spasms in the middle of each cycle, those massive driving onto madness contracting pains of childbirth, could any woman endure them if not for the fact that they were reminders of that link? Don't be rude, Ravi, I said harshly, trying to be the crisply authoritative elder sister. Only, in spite of the 6 years between us, I had never been able to play that role with him. Even when Ravi called me Jayatai, he seemed to be parodying the elder sister-younger brother relationship. Ignoring my reprimand, Ravi went on. And that's not all. More problems. The driver chap has left. Who knows, just took his pay on the first and never showed his face again. And there's the car rusting in the garage. I used to drive Shanjamama about, he said modestly. But I thought Jashibua's Gampet used to help out. Too busy. Don't you know he has his own pharmacy shop now? AI and Vanita Mommy are very bitter. He's become too big, they keep saying. And nobody liked Jashibua. Remember how they used to curse Jashibua in those days, especially when he went off on his drunken binge. We laughed. Linked again by a common memory, that of Jashibua, Shanjumama's compounder, dispenser, and man Friday. Jashibua, a small, dignified man, his hair swept up into tiny curls that edged a faded brown cap, had worked nearly 12 hours a day. Even on Sunday he was there, peering at the patients through the small hatch of his compounder's cubbyhole. About 2 or 3 days a month he just took off, going God knows where. On a bout of drinking. At such times, his look-alike brother had deputized for him, and it had been almost as if Jashibua was still there. The only difference between them had been that Jashibua's brother had had a relaxed air, whereas Jashibua himself always had an air of being prepared for all eventualities. He never removed the rounded cycling clips that confined the folds of his dhoti round his skinny calves. Perhaps it was these that gave him the look of a sprinter, ready to take off. Poor Ganpat, I smiled. I suppose to AI and Vanita Mommy he's still Jashibua's snotty-nosed kid. Unhun. Actually, AI isn't too well either. Shandamama was telling me her blood pressure has been fluctuating too much. Oh no, the idea of AI having a stroke. of her lying in bed for years like her mother, my other Aggie, was a nightmare I lived with. I had only to remember other Aggie who had been bedridden, totally paralyzed for 15 years, to break into a cold sweat. And AI was telling me, you know how she takes you inside and whispers, that she's utterly fed up with Ambigayon. Took her long enough realizing that, I said sourly. I remember how furious she used to get when Appa made fun of Ambigayon. Amgayon, town of mangoes, Appa used to declaim sarcastically. Ha, the mangoes are here with us in Saptagiri. Those Saptagiri mangoes, small, perfectly shaped, gold-tinted, ambrosial altogether, I pushed away the memory and my cup as well. So what are you trying to say? That I should go to Ambigayon? Ravi shrugged. That's entirely up to you. I've just told you the facts. But yes, I do think you should go. They need you. And we may have to bring Vanita Mommy here for a second opinion. The doctor said so. Laxman Kaka's daughter-in-law, Janu's wife, she works in Tata Hospital, doesn't she? I want you to get it done through her, an appointment and all that. I mean, I don't know her very well. I can do that, I said slowly, thinking of Ravi's words. They need you. That's fine then. Once you do that, Shanju Mama will bring Vanita Mommy here. How much? He asked the waiter who had come with our bill. No, let me pay. With an expansive gesture, Ravi waved away my hand, but while he groped through his pockets, I placed some money on the bill. Oh, come on, Jayatai, you shouldn't have. Let me give it to you. How much? Don't be silly, it isn't worth bothering about. I suppose AI will have to come too. Here, of course. And oh yes, you'll have to put them up. I'd have done it, but I'm alone right now. Asha has gone to her dad's place. Again? I asked with a smile. It was impossible to take Asha's and Ravi's quarrels seriously. They seemed in some way unburdened by marriage. Perhaps this was because they had no children. Unhun, let's go. It was gray and cloudy outside, on the brink of rain. But Ravi, the moment we stepped out, pulled his huge dark glasses out of his pocket and began wiping them in a workmanlike manner. Oh yes, there was something else I wanted to ask you, he said, as if he had suddenly remembered something unimportant. But I, who knew him better, knew that he had finally come to the point. There was relief. I had been uneasy all the while, with an odd feeling of being circumvented. Now, he finally had me in the circle he had marked out for me. Look, I want you to talk to Asha. She's got into one of her states, you know how childish she can be. But this time it's her father, he's flown into a temper. He was nasty to me, he said he would never let her come back to me. What business is it of his? I could have, Ravi, what have you done? Ravi looked sulky, the petulant little boy saying, I didn't do anything, she started it. But I knew better. It was not just that I knew Asha to be one of those persons one could call good. There was neither malice nor meanness in her. The fact was, I knew Ravi too well. I'd known for years that he was that rare thing among the middle class, a man who lived by drifting on the edge of dishonesty. He was rarely unemployed, but I never knew what he was actually working at, and I never asked. I only knew he'd had a variety of occupations, all of which were purely temporary. And yet the next job was just like the one he'd had before. It seemed to be Ravi's destiny to succeed at nothing, but neither was he a failure. He teetered on the narrow line between success and failure, belonging nowhere. Me, I haven't done anything. It's her father who's got something into his head. I don't want him interfering in my marriage. I want you to tell Asha I won't stand for it. I'm not going to put up with his big bully tactics. Just let him try and I'll chuck her just like that. He snapped his fingers. Divorce, you fool, Ravi. What else can I do? I tell you, Jayatai, I'm a patient man, but... Okay, I'll talk to Asha. When? I'll ring her up. What's her dad's phone number? No, I'll ask her to ring you up. It's no use. We're not in Churchgate at present. It had to be said. What do you mean? I told you the kids have gone south on a trip with Rupa and Ashok, and Mohan and I are in Dadar, Makarand Mama's place. Unhun. Sadhu's gone home for Ganapati and Mohan's taken leave to write a report, and I had to clean up the Dadar place. I hadn't gone there since Kusum left. Was I overdoing it? Yes, I was, for Ravi was smiling. I'd seen that smile on his face when, with a cold cruelty, he had blurted out the secrets I'd written in my diary, often using my very words, making them sound so foolish that everyone had laughed. Mohan. Now, who was it telling me? Let me see, just 2 or 3 days back. I'd gone to the Sachivalaya, yes, that's right, and... Someone now, who was it? Ah, got it. He snapped his fingers again theatrically. It was Mahesh Gadkari. He's in the legal department. He asked me whether Mohan, they all know he's my brother-in-law. he asked me whether Mohan was in some kind of trouble. For the first time since Mohan had spoken to me, fear touched me, a light butterfly touch, but it made me shiver. What trouble? I don't know, I'm asking you. Come on, Jayatai, I won't say a word to anyone. Is there any problem? I may be able to help. I've got contacts. You. But Ravi wasn't offended. Okay, I know you don't have any faith in me, but there's Dilip. Dilip will always help. You've only two. Say a word to him, and he'll do all he can. He has a lot of power. He's one of those legislators who can go directly to the chief minister. Ravi's life was based on contacts. I suppose Mohan had been one of them. At present, however, Dilip, who'd won an assembly seat in the last elections, was his most important contact. Nonsense, I said, admiring myself for the crispness with which I brought out the word. We don't need Dilip, and ask Asha to come and see me. I'll let her know when. I do hope there's nothing seriously wrong. I don't know what AI will say if she comes to hear about you too. But I could guess. She would rush to take her stance by Ravi. I knew it, she would say. I always knew that girl was no good for my Ravi. She would believe it too, forgetting how enthusiastic she had been about Asha at first. I's initial enthusiasm had been nor for Asha's qualities, but for her good looks and her father's money. Both she and Vanita Mommy had made a pet of Asha, fussing and cooing over her during the wedding, caressing and fondling her as if she had been a doll. They had hung over her as she sat decked in silks and jewels. Only her innate good nature had enabled Asha to stand all that rubbish, but I had felt sorry for her and indignant on her behalf, until I had seen the pearls on her. AI gave these to me, she had said, smiling at me with the naive, unself-conscious pleasure of a child, using the word AI as familiarly as if she had been speaking of her own mother. AI herself never referred to that gift of hers. I could only make surmises about her motives. The pearls had been my other Aji, I's mother, part of the hoard of jewels to which she had clung with passion even when she had become a widow and could no longer wear them. To think of my other Aji was to get a whiff of the sickening smell of her room in which she had lain for years until she died. God, how slowly she had died bit by bit, until in the end only her eyes had seemed alive, eyes that had looked out at the world maliciously and suspiciously. I'd never heard her talk pleasantly to anyone, or about anyone, not even AI, her only daughter. Yet AI had always said to me, be nice to your Aji Java. You never know. It had taken me a long time to relate that enigmatic, you never know to other Aji's jewels. The jewels had been kept in a small locked cupboard at the head of her bed, with the keys, both of the cupboard and of the small steel trunk in which the jewels were enshrined, hanging on a string round other Aji's scrawny neck. I had hoped I would get those jewels. Was I not the only granddaughter? I had not been in Ambigayon when other Aji died, so I never had any idea of I's feelings when she had discovered that other Aji had left nothing for her. All the jewels had been given to Shanju Mama, who had no children. But he was the son. Perhaps the old woman had not been able to get away from that fact finally. Aji had given him everything, except the pearl bracelets and the one string of pearls. These had been I's only legacy. There is also, it occurs to me now, the legacy of hypertension of a possible stroke. The least valuable of her jewels, AI had said bitterly. You can have them if you want them, she had added indifferently, and we had left it at that, until I had seen Asha wearing them. AI gave these to me. I was angry, not so much for myself as for Ratty. I didn't want those pearls. I had never hankered after jewelry myself, and even if I had, the association of these with other Aji would have spoilt them for me. But surely Ratty, as a granddaughter, had a better right to them than Asha, who was, after all, only a daughter-in-law. I can manage AI, don't worry, Ravi said, bringing me back to now. It's that father-in-law of mine, that son of a bitch, just because he has money. Ravi's voice was loud, but only one face turned curiously to us as we waited at the edge of the pavement to cross the road. The lights turned green and we rushed across in a frenzy, feeling the heat of the raring-to-go vehicles at our back. They always terrified me, those monsters, waiting, it seemed, to crush me. So many chariots of Jagannath promising us moksha. But there was no moksha anymore. I knew that. There would only be a body lying spread-eagled on the road and curious, indifferent strangers staring down at it. Once across, Ravi and I parted wordlessly. But for some reason I turned round and saw his back for a moment before he was swallowed up by the crowd. His back looked so much like Appa's, it gave me a jolt. As I walked across Tillich Bridge, I had a strange, dizzy sensation, as if the bridge was swaying under me. I gave up the idea of walking home or of waiting for a bus and hailed a taxi instead. Traffic lights again, and it was my turn to watch people stamping from pavement to pavement. "Lottery ticket!" A hand was thrust in through the window. "Only 1 rupee. Draw date on the 10th. 1 lakh prize." Not for me, for Ratty. Why was I trying to fool myself? The justification, not for me, for my children, could not change the meaning of the words avarice and greed. Peel off the excuses and the avarice remained. The moment I closed the door behind me, Mohan's voice came out to me. "Jaya!" He was sitting listlessly on the disheveled bed, the cup of tea I had brought him just before I'd gone out on the chair beside the bed, untasted, a wrinkled skin of brown on top. Mohan looked as if he hadn't moved from the bed since I left. His face, with deep lines etched round his mouth, seemed oddly puffy. Sluttish. No, that was not a word used for men, but it was the word that came to my mind when I looked at Mohan. "Have you been sleeping all this while?" "No." He made a face and got out of bed, pushing the chair away with his foot. The cup rocked, came perilously close to the edge. I picked it up and took it into the kitchen. When I came back, I could hear him energetically splashing his face in the bathroom. He emerged, shaking the water off his face. Silently, I handed him a towel and began folding the sari I'd just pulled off and thrown on the bed. Mohan, peering into the mirror to comb his hair, asked me, "And what was Ravi saying?" "Ravi," I smiled at his reflection, but he had already straightened up and my smile bounced off his back. "Where's my— oh, there it is." I shrugged myself into my housecoat. "He's just back from Ambigaon. He read out the family bulletin." "What's the news?" Mohan turned round to face me now. He had washed and combed his hair, and yet the impression of disorderliness remained. "Plenty, most of it bad. The worst is that Vanitamami is not well. Maybe cancer, according to Ravi." I looked at Mohan, but there was no response except a flat, disinterested "oh." "Ravi says the doctor would like to get a second opinion here in Bombay." "I have to get in touch with Medha, Janu's wife. You know, she's in Tata." Suddenly, my uneasiness found a focus. Mohan wasn't really listening to me at all. I stopped speaking, and Mohan didn't take notice of that either. I put away my clothes, tidied the bed, and went to have a wash. When I came back, Mohan was again lying on the bed. But as if my uneasiness had communicated itself to him, he looked up and asked me, "What was it that Ravi wanted from you? What was so urgent that you had to go today?" "Oh, that. He and Asha have quarreled again. Looks like it's a bit more serious this time. She's gone back to her father, and the father, according to Ravi, is acting tough. Ravi wants me to talk to Asha." "What?" As I turned inquiringly to him, he said, "I mean, what is it he wants you to say to her?" I removed my pins and shook my hair free and looked dispassionately at myself in the mirror. Only the eyes do not share the exactitude of your other features." I turned determinedly away from the mirror. "Ravi didn't spell it out, but he doesn't need to. I know what he'd like me to say. Go home like a good girl, Asha, I should say. Go back home. And obey your husband. And never mind whatever it is he has done. He's your husband, after all, and a husband can do no wrong." It was Mohan's silence and a quality of tenseness about him that brought to me an awareness of my words. I hurried on, frantically trying to bridge the uneasy pause. "Well, I had to agree to meeting her. At least she'll tell me what's wrong. Ravi never will let out anything. He's as slippery as an eel. I told Ravi I'd ring Asha up and ask her to come here." For the first time, Mohan was really listening to me. "You told Ravi we're here?" I had to. I couldn't help it. I gave him some kind of an explanation, but you know Ravi, I could see him sniffing away. And oh yes, how did I forget? Ravi was telling me he's heard something about your being in some kind of trouble." Mohan sat up, both his hands clutching the sheet I'd just smoothed down. Whatever mask he'd been wearing since I came home had fallen off, and I could see now that this was the face of an adversary. My heart jumped. I could feel it leaping once, twice, before it settled down into an uneasy, jerky rhythm. "Trouble? What do you mean trouble? No, let that alone." Angrily, he prevented me from readying the disarranged sheet. "What trouble?" "I don't know. I mean, Ravi didn't say what. He just said." What did he say?" I was under attack. The questions rained on me. An adversary, yes. That was what Mohan was, and an adversary more hostile than I had imagined. "Didn't you ask him any more? Didn't you try to find out any more?" I cringed under his anger. No, anger was too inadequate a word for what came across to me, and I could do nothing but stammer out negatives. With each question of his, I could feel even the slight information I had had from Ravi slipping away from me. What was it? Ravi had said. Who spoke to Ravi about it? What's the name of that person? Did Ravi mention any name? Didn't you ask him? I can't remember, I don't remember, no. At last, realizing I could tell him no more, Mohan turned away from me. No, not away, he turned on me. Each relationship evolves its own vocabulary. Ours had been that of the workaday world. The vocabulary of love, which I had thought would come to us naturally and inevitably, had passed us by. So too had the vocabulary of anger. No, it was I who had left that alone after the day when my first disastrous foray into verbalizing emotions had almost ripped our marriage apart. Since then, we'd never gone beyond those first basic madras. Now suddenly, unfairly, he'd overtaken me. His fingers flickered, creating images not of beauty, but of darkness and deceit. I've been going through hell. I've been worried to death since Agarwal warned me about what was likely to happen. But you've been so unconcerned. You said, let's go to Dadar, and I came here with you. Here with me. It was not Mohan's laughter. I'd never heard this laugh before. You've never been here. Servants, neighbors, you've grabbed at anyone, at any excuse to avoid me. This, like all Mohan's occasional flashes of perspicacity, startled me. Since the day I told you what Agarwal had said to me, you've been totally indifferent. But you've always been this way. In Lohanagar, I remember you asked me, what's CE? But how could I know all those short forms, that CE is chief engineer and MD is all the wives, even the stupidest ones knew it. You just didn't care enough to bother to know. A small thing like being a bit friendly with the CE's wife was beyond you. She expected me to suck up to her. And what about me? What do you think I had to do to get us into the Type C quarters? It didn't matter so much to me, whether we stayed in Type B or C, but you kept saying you wouldn't. You couldn't stay in that first house of ours. You said you had to get out of there. I was swamped by memories, by the unhappiness which had seemed as much a part of that first home of ours as the stench of cockroaches, drains, and toilets. My heart had sunk at the very sight of those rows of buildings, each with 4 flats, all of them equally ugly, the walls badly, unevenly plastered, the paint discolored by the damp that had seeped through, the rough cement floor that had never looked clean, however much one swabbed at it. But it was not the ugliness that had made me unhappy. No, that would have been too pretentious. It had been something quite different. I had felt in some way trapped. The easy, facile tears that were always near the surface had spilled over perpetually when I had been alone. There had been something shamming, if also slightly pleasurable, in the luxurious abandon with which the tears had gushed out, often for no reason at all. I had sobbed even over the newspaper, as much over more DA for government employees, as over man stabs wife and children. Strangely, the tears came only when I was alone. Once, however, neighbor had surprised me sobbing, and she had put it down to the homesickness of a newly married girl. The only time I had lost control. In Mohan's presence, he had been terrified. Finally, he too had asked, "Are you missing your mother?" I would have laughed if I had been able to stop crying. But knowing I had to give some explanation, an explanation which instinct had warned me had to absolve him of any connection with my tears, I had blurted out, "I can't bear this place, it stinks, I can't even eat my food, it all comes up to here." How relieved Mohan had been when a few days later he had come to know that I was pregnant. That had solved the puzzle for him. He had humored me, saying, "By the time you return from Ambagayon with the baby, we'll be out of here, I promise you that." I promised you we would get out of those quarters, and I kept my promise. And it was the sea who helped me. He was not a man to do a favor for nothing. You never cared to ask what I had to do to get us those quarters. I thought it just happened. I thought it was a normal, oh God, why were we squabbling like 2 idiotic kids? What had a thing so long past to do with us now? But Mohan could not stop. I got into the CE's clutches after that. He wanted a scapegoat in case things went wrong, so it was I who had to okay all that substandard stuff. The CE and the contractors made a packet out of that, and all that I got out of it was that house. But it didn't matter to you. Nothing mattered to you, only your needs. You could see nothing else. My needs are needs, the children's needs. It was impossible to untangle them. I couldn't even try, and it was too late anyway. But I know that I've never mattered to you, not really. You married me only because Dinkar told you to. I wouldn't let this pass. Who told you this? Your mother. AI. Yes, I know what you think of your mother. I've heard Dinkar and you laughing at her, making fun of her, your own mother. How can I expect you to have any feelings for me? These odd, almost flippant charges and such deadly anger. What was he getting at? It was as if we'd been silently weaving the threads of guilt, anger, and resentment between us all these days. Now the fabric was complete, and yet I had no idea what the overall design was. Each new accusation only bewildered me the more. I just couldn't see what he was pointing at. We were like the kids in a comic strip. See that star? That one? No, the other one. You mean that one? No, that one. I was full of a sense of angry confusion. What was he charging me with? And oh God, why couldn't I speak? Why couldn't I say something? I felt foolishly inadequate, having nothing to offer him in exchange for all these charges he was pouring onto me. It was only when he said, "I've never come in your way, I've let you do what you want," that there was a sudden painful quiver in me and I suddenly overcame my aphonia. "My writing," I said, clumsily abrupt. "I gave it up because of you." "Your writing?" His astonishment was genuine. "What do you mean? Why even here when I've been so upset, I've been careful. I've tried not to disturb you when you were writing. From the very beginning, I've allowed you to write. I've encouraged you. I was proud of you." My wife is a writer. Yes, that was something to be proud of, a respectable hobby, something that set me apart from other women. Gave me a status that added a bit to his. My wife is a writer, he had often introduced me. Recognition, if it came, had pleased him enormously. If it hadn't, he had explained further. She writes for Woman's World, you know, those stories about Sita. Even to be jocularly called Mr. Sita had enhanced his pleasure. You know, it was I who spoke to the editor of the Sunday paper about that weekly column. I don't want to take any credit I don't deserve, but it did make a difference, my speaking to the editor about you. That column, yes, it had made me known. My profile silhouetted in stark black that accompanied each article frightened me each time I saw it. It was like seeing someone masquerading as myself, or as if I was masquerading as the woman who wrote that column. The woman who wrote it had no doubts about anything, only strong convictions, and she was a liberal without any prejudices. Whereas I, when the pockmarked doctor in Ambigayon, so gray and dusty otherwise, had suddenly sparkled at my presence, my instinctive reaction had been a kind of recoil. My immediate thought had been, but he's so ugly. And when Rahul was born, my first question, even before I had come wholly out of the anesthesia, had been, is he fair? "It's not that writing I'm speaking of," I said dully, thinking, it's no use, he has truly forgotten. What can be worse than that? He has forgotten what he did. And I realized that even if I spoke, he would not listen to me. He had armed himself with an anger that seemed not quite real, but underneath it I could sense a genuine hostility. He accused me of not caring about the children, of isolating myself from him and his concerns, even of some obscure revengeful feelings that were driving me to act this way. My own feeble defenses had no chance before this fierce onslaught, but I tried to stop him nevertheless. "I've allowed you to have your way in most things. I never came in your way when you wanted to help your family. I let you do what you wanted, except when it inconvenienced you." "What do you mean?" "The job I wanted to take, the baby I had wanted to adopt, the anti-price campaign I'd wanted to take part in. But even as I listed these to myself, it came to me that perhaps it had nothing to do with Mohan, the fact that I had not done these things, that I had left them alone. Perhaps I had not really cared enough about these things myself. Instead I said, and my voice sounded sullen even to me, "I've done everything you wanted me to. And now, I thought I must add, I've sacrificed my life for you and the children." But real bitterness clawed its way through this self-mockery, and I was conscious of having been chained to his dream, the dream that had begun for him when, as a boy, he had seen a gleaming vision of 3 women in a dingy corridor. It seemed to me that I'd carried those 3 women of his through all the years of our marriage, but nothing could stop him. It was like a deluge. Ramukaka's Mira, who had been in Pune the year the Panchit Dam had burst, had told us how, hearing that the river was rising, some of them had gone, filled with a pleasurable excitement to see it. But the river was rising so fast, we had to run back. It was as if it was chasing us. A few minutes more and we would have been drowned. There had been incredulous anger in her tone, the angry amazement of one betrayed by something she had thought innocuous. I felt the same now. Cheating, I wanted to cry out, the way we had as children when we knew we were going to be defeated. But, as if I'd been struck dumb, I could say nothing. I sat in my place, pinned to it by his anger, a monstrously huge spear that went through me, excruciatingly painful, yet leaving me cruelly conscious. My wife! The words ran like a refrain through his outburst, and I could see her, the woman I had seen in the mirror the day of our wedding, a woman who had not seemed to be me, who had taken the burden of wifehood off me, a humorless, obsessive person. But Mohan's eyes, as he spoke of her, were agonized, the eyes of a man who'd lost a dear one. Suhasini was dead, yes, that was it. She was the one Mohan was mourning. She'd walked into the sea at last. No, the fact was that I'd finally done it, I'd killed her. No, that was not right, either. We had killed her between us, Mohan and I, but in dying she'd given me back the burden she'd been carrying for me all these years. I had finally to bear it myself, the burden of wifehood. If ever I'd been irresponsible and callous, Mohan was saying, and I knew he was thinking of his father. But I've never been that. I've always put you and the children first. I've been patient with all your whims. I've grudged you nothing. But the truth is that you despise me because I've failed. As long as I had my job and position, it was all right. As long as I could give you all the comforts, it was all right. But now, because I'm likely to lose it all, no, that's not true. That's a terrible thing to say. It's stupid, I cried out. I couldn't let him get away with such an ugly accusation. And yet I remembered Dada's words. He's an engineer. He has a good job. It's not just you, it's all women, he went on, ignoring my words. My mother. He began, but I wouldn't let him go on. What do you think I am? What kind of a woman do you think I am? I asked him angrily. I know you, he said, and as if to reassure himself, repeated, after all these years together, don't you think I know you well enough? No, I wanted to say, no, you don't know me at all. But he was right. Of course he knew her well, the woman who had lived with him as his wife. That woman, she'd married a man with a promising future. Now she would. As I hesitated, my confused thoughts swirling in my mind, Mohan said, his tone mournful now, his face too. Do you think I haven't seen how changed you are since we came here, since I told you about my situation? Mohan's face, now what did it remind me of? Yes, Rahul. Rahul had looked like this when I had pulled my nipple or the bottle out of his mouth. Poor Rahul, poor Mohan deprived of the nipple, I must not laugh. Even in the midst of my rising hysteria, a warning bell sounded loud and clear. I had to control myself, I had to cork in this laughter. But it was too late. I could not hold it in any longer. Laughter burst out of me, spilled over, and Mohan stared at me in horror as I rocked helplessly. When finally I recovered myself, I was alone in the room. Silence flowed into it. I wiped my face and tried to realize what I'd done. I've done this before, I thought. This has happened to me once before. Yes, Dada and I laughing and AI raging at us, laughing with your father dead only a week. Are you human beings or are you animals? We hadn't explained then, we hadn't been able to explain why we were laughing. It had seemed simpler, better, to let AI punish us with her ugly anger, for we hadn't known ourselves why in the midst of our terrible grief, a small thing had triggered off our hysterical laughter. But this time, I thought, I will explain to Mohan. I'm sorry, I will say, I didn't mean to laugh, I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at everything. Marriage, us. This whole absurd exercise we call life. Sitting on the bed, smoothing the stuff of my housecoat on my thigh, I tried to put words together while in my ears I could hear the savage pounding beats of my heart. As the pounding slowed down, receded, I heard footsteps. Mohan was coming back in. I had to talk to him to explain away everything. My body went rigid. I could feel a chill along my upper arms, my forehead, as the sweat broke out. But the footsteps moved away. I heard the front door open and then a bang as it closed. He's gone. Instantly, I rushed to the door and looked out. There was no one on the stairs. I raced in the same frenzy to the balcony. Mohan emerged from the building and, without looking up, briskly walked away. Just before he got to the corner, he stopped a cruising taxi and got in. The taxi moved slowly to the center of the road and was lost among all the other vehicles. How long had I been sitting on this sofa? I got up, stiff-kneed, conscious only now that the bustle of evening noises outside had shaded off into muted night sounds. I stumbled over a stool as I moved towards the switch. It was not the darkness. It was as if I could no longer orient myself in this place. It had been this way with me in Saptagiri when I'd gone there by myself, defying AI, after Saptagiri Aji's death. I had fumbled my way about in that house of Aji's I'd known so well, as if I'd never been in it before. Why did you go there? AI had asked me angrily when I had gone back to Ambagayon. Why didn't you come straight home from the hostel? This is not my home is in Saptagiri, I had said childishly. But even then I'd known it was not true. Without Appa and Agi, Saptagiri had ceased to be home. "Come often, Jaya," the caucus had said. "This is your home." But it wasn't. I had known that clearly the moment I had stepped out of the Tonga in front of Agi's house. Yet to AI I had declared, "My home is in Saptagiri." Why had I tried so hard to hurt her feelings? Nothing remained of that tumult of feelings except a picture of AI lying stiff and rigid on her bed the day after Appa's death, her hands folded on her chest, her toes pointing upwards, simulating, it had seemed, Appa's pose on his bier. I had held my breath and watched her fearfully. Was she too dead? My throat and chest painful as if they had been scoured with something abrasive. Then her chest had moved and I had let out my breath. I stood staring at the room flooded now with light, my hand still on the switch. What did I need light for? I switched it off and moved to the bedroom, thinking of that rhyme Ratty had loved to chant. Bedtime, candle time to go to sleep. Time to close the storybooks, not another peep. Time to go to sleep. Time to close the storybooks. And they lived happily ever after. I lay on my bed in the dark, waiting for Mohan to come home. Waiting for Mohan to come home, how often I'd done it since we got married. But this was different. "He won't come now, he must be dead somewhere." Rahul had said this. I had been waiting for Mohan, who had been very late coming home that day, and I had slapped Rahul hard. His face swam in the dark before me, the red rushing into the indentations left by my fingers on his cheeks, his mouth wide open, his eyes, Ram Nam Satyahai, Ram Nam Satyahai. Somebody was dead. They were taking the person away. The lantern sent a weird chiaroscuro along the walls. The room was dark again. I could hear the thud of someone pounding something upstairs. "Would you mind not doing that at night? My baby is sleeping. My baby is not well." Yes, it was I who had said that. I had been Sister Sparrow then. "Close the doors, stay inside, and you're safe." Somewhere a radio was blaring out a film song, "Come back, my love, come back to me." But Mohan was not my love. He had never been that. He told me, "You've never cared for me." Then what have I been doing, living with him all these years? "Mummy, mummy." Somewhere I could hear a child's cries. Somewhere a cooker was hissing angrily. But none of these sounds was real. They had nothing to do with me. Until suddenly, unfairly, without any warning, the deadening cotton wool fell away from me and it began. The fine quivering in my abdomen that was always for me the prelude to panic. "I'm alone. I must talk to someone. I'll go upstairs and talk to Kamat." The thought died the moment it was born. And now the sense of confusion, of turmoil, towards which I had been rushing headlong, met me with brutal force. I could feel myself gasping, drowning in the darkness, the wild, flailing, panic-stricken movements that I was making taking me lower and lower into the vortex. I switched on the radio and turned frantically from station to station. Music, film music, a talk, screeching sounds, take your pain between your teeth, bite on it, don't let it escape. I came floundering out of the depths, thinking, am I going crazy like Kusum? Kusum, as if the thought of her had been an open sesame, I found myself engulfed by the ghost of Kusum, welcoming me to the category of unwanted wives, deserted wives, claiming me joyfully at last as a companion. I could not escape her anymore. There was nowhere I could go, nowhere else she could go either. Here we were together at last, Jaya and Kusum. How hatefully they had clubbed our names together when we went to live in Ambigayon after Appa's death. Jaya and Kusum. And Kusum had gladly welcomed me, pushing herself past my barrier of reserve as she had never done until then. She had importuned me with her wearying appeals. "Let's go for a walk, Jaya. Let's go to a picture. Let's go to the shops." "No," I had said to her. No, and over again no. But she would never let me alone. Until one day, driven to desperation by her maddening persistence, I had screamed at her. "I'm not going out with you. I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere. My father is dead. Don't you know that my father is dead?" "Oh," she had said, a small, unwondering exclamation, and gone on with her pursuit of me as a companion. Vanita Mommy, too, had constantly clubbed our names together, and I had pretended not to hear. "I will go to Bombay. I had decided then I won't stay here and be one half of the Jaya and Kusum entity." But Kusum had been immensely patient. She had been waiting all these years for me. And so here we were, both of us rejected by our husbands, our families, failures at everything. But Kusum was nuts. "Thank God, Kusum, you're nuts," I had thought complacently. "Because you're nuts, I know I'm not, I know I'm sane." How could I be sure of that anymore? Without Kusum, my sanity seemed suspect. Why, even Kusum had never admitted that there was anything wrong with her. "I'm all right," she had said. "I don't need any treatment, I'm all right." They always say that, the doctor had said to me later, a small smile establishing a barrier between them and us. Now, how was I to know that I was not one of them? Come here, Jaya, I want to show you something, Kusum had said, her rough, hard hand gripping mine so tightly that I had cried out in angry pain. We had been in Kusum's house, which was why she had been so assured, so confident. Come with me, I want to show you something, she had insisted, her normally dull eyes gleaming with excitement. What is it? I had asked indifferently, put off by her irritating persistence. There's a mad woman next door. Sometimes she runs out screaming, she even tears off all her clothes. I saw her once, the voice had dropped, the eyes had glittered even more, and she was fully naked. Dilip says she's begun screaming again, want to see her naked. Poor Kusum, so sure of your own sanity even then, so cruelly scornful of the woman's madness. Had you too thought, thank God you're mad next-door woman, because you're mad I know I'm sane. Poor crazy Kusum. No, that was wrong. It wasn't poor crazy Kusum at all, it was poor Jaya. In her madness, sycophantic, dependent, frightened, clinging Kusum had escaped. In her madness, she had been able to get away from the burden of pleasing others. Only in her madness had she been able to be gloriously, unashamedly herself. But we hadn't let her stay there, in that world where the cry of run, Kusum, Shanjumama is coming couldn't penetrate. And so she had thrown herself into a well. Yes, now that I thought of it, it was quite clear that it could not be poor Kusum at all. Hadn't she taken the biggest decision of all, the only decision that mattered in life, whether to live or to die? It could not possibly be poor Kusum. It was poor Jaya. I had to stop this. I had to get a grip on myself. None of this made sense. None of it was true. Mohan had not left me. He would be back. If there was nothing else to reassure me, there was my knowledge of Mohan, of the utter strength of his convictions. A husband and wife care for each other, live with each other until they are dead. Parents care for their children, and children in turn look after their parents when they are needed. Marriages never end. They cannot, they are a state of being. Mohan's beliefs, when I listed them, were like a pole that pulled me out of a quagmire of doubts. Yes, Mohan would be back. Not only that, he would be repentant, showing his repentance in myriad devious ways. In the daytime, his voice would follow me about. Jaya, Jaya, he would call out over and over again. In the dark, he would hold me close and say, I didn't mean it, you know I didn't. He would make love to me and ask me at the end of it, have I hurt you? No, I would reply, and we would go on as before. The two of us growing gently, graciously, affectionately old together, the images filled me with pleasure. I pushed the picture away in disgust. It was false. We could not go on as before. We had come to the end of this road. There had been, perhaps, a moment when I could have prevented him from leaving, when I could have cried out to him, don't go, don't leave me and go. What if I had done that? But I had forgotten one thing, it would have made no difference. There was a simple word I had to take into account, retribution. How Aji had frightened us children with her dire pronouncements. Tell lies now and you'll be a lizard in your next life. Steal things and you'll be a dog, cheat people and you'll be a snake. Now I knew better. We didn't have to wait for another life for our punishment. It was all reserved for us right here and now. An act and retribution, they followed each other naturally and inevitably. Dasarath killed an innocent young boy whose parents died crying out for their son. And years later, Dasarath died too, calling out for his son, Rama, Rama. Yes, escape was never possible. I could not afford to forget Kusum crying out to me, don't go, Jaya, don't leave me here and go. Stay with me. I had brought her an early morning cup of tea here in this very room when suddenly the swaddled in a sari bundle had sprung up and become a frightened animal, eyes smoldering fearfully at me out of the early morning gloom of the room. It came back to me, the rank, sweaty odor of her body, the fetid, unwashed stink of her mouth, and most of all her anguished cries, don't go, Jaya, don't leave me here and go stay with me. But I went. Jija will be here, your Lada is here, Mukta will come whenever you want. I'd tried to reason with her, but she had clung to me as if there was no one else in the world. Don't be a fool, I'd said at last, losing my patience, and walked out. I'd gone home to my husband and children, leaving Kusum behind, Kusum with tears running in torrents down her sweaty, soot-darkened cheeks, leaving salty runnels all along that tragic face. I was sobbing dry, hurting sobs which tapered off as I realized that Dada was sitting near me, holding my hand comfortingly. Relief and happiness flooded me, only to be wrenched painfully out of me as I woke up to find myself alone, the pillow by my side an unwrinkled blank, my face wet with tears, my hands painfully clenched. I lay in bed, not wiping the tears, while the early morning sounds drifted in through the window. And, as if I had just grabbed the tail end of my dream before it slid away from me entirely on the moment of waking, I could hear Dada's words. "I'm going, Jaya. I'm going to the States." Why, after so many years, had that moment come to me in a dream? It was Mohan I was waiting for, Mohan who had not returned home. Why then should I have dreamt of Dada's going away? We had been walking in Shivaji Park when Dada had made that announcement to me. The scene came back to me clearly, a child on his three-wheeled scooter, pushing himself with his foot, calling back to his mother. "Look at me, Mummy, look at me." And the fat woman who kept just ahead of us, walking with a dogged determination, her hips wobbling at each step, huge drops of sweat oozing out of the rolls of fat round her waist. And the wind blowing into our faces, blowing my hair into an irritating tangle blowing straight at us from the sea but carrying no trace of a salty tang with it, bringing instead the voices of schoolchildren singing a song in unison. "I'm going to the States, Jaya." Bite on your pain, don't let it escape, don't let it cry out, yes. It had been Appa who had said that to us when we had got hurt. When? In 2 or 3 months. I thought I'd tell all of you only when things were definite. I haven't told AI as yet. Do you remember Shahani, my roommate? He's there now, he's fixed it up for me. He's in New Jersey, but I'll be in Chicago. The words of the song had become intelligible. We will win or we will die. What do they mean? Who? Those children, that song they're singing. Oh, that, I suppose they're rehearsing for Republic Day. Too late, isn't it? For Republic Day, that's next week. Jaya, where are you? No, I mean too late to win or die. We've already lost. The Chinese, you mean, but that. Dada's words were drowned by the loud wails of the child who had fallen off his scooter. He stood there, his eyes searching for his mother, the tears pouring down his face. The wind changed, the voices became distant. I felt suddenly cold. The world dipped and quivered, darkness danced before my eyes. I sat down abruptly. All the sounds came together, becoming one meaningless buzz. I came back to see Dada's face near mine, his voice asking me, "Jaya, what is it? Are you all right?" I sat back on my heels, swayed, steadied myself, then smiled reassuringly at him. "I'm okay, give me a minute." The child back on his scooter, the mother's voice following him, "Be careful, go slow." The song back with the wind, the voices young and strong, uplifted. Everything was possible. "We will win, I'm pregnant." "Oh, that's all right then. You scared me for a moment. How many months?" "Almost 2.5. Too soon after Rahul, isn't it?" "Unhun. Feeling better. Come on, let's go back. You stay in bed, I'll do the cooking today." We'd come back here that day, to this place, and Dada had cooked a magnificent pulao while I had fed Rahul and put him to bed. And in a while I had been able to talk to Dada as usual. We had been laughing over something, a family joke perhaps, when Mohan had come in. I looked up and seen him standing there, staring at us with a queer look on his face, as if we were two strangers he had never seen before. Memory is selective. When so many things had gone, why could I still remember the geometrical swirls on a dress of mine, the olive green and pink colors in the design, the feel of the fabric against my legs? And now, from the same storehouse, it came back to me, the memory I had put away for so long, my great act of treachery against Mohan, the child I had destroyed without his knowledge. I felt myself getting confused. Was this the child I'd announced to Dada in Shivji Park that day? No, that had been Ratty. This child, the one I'd refused to let live, had been after Ratty. Dada had come home on leave then. Yes, he was getting married. "It's not fair," Dada had argued when I had asked him to help me. "You've got to tell Mohan about it. You can't keep such a thing from him." But I had been stubborn, terrified I would be betrayed into letting the child live. I had had a feeling that Mohan would not allow me to unburden myself of the child. Poor Dada, he had done his best. From being facetious, he had become irritable, but I had been firm, though unable to explain my panic to him. Finally, Dada had given in, bearing the burden of my secret with reluctance. But what had I cared about that? How easy it had been. I had come out of the anesthesia thinking, I've had a baby. Almost on the instant, it had changed into the awareness of I've lost a baby. But there had been no guilt in me. When Mohan had come back from his official trip and I had lied to him, there had been no guilt even then. But now, as if it had been waiting for its cue all these years, a shadowy figure in the wings, guilt sprang out at me. I thought of the unborn child with dread and a piercing sorrow. I invested her, yes, it would have been a girl with all the qualities I missed in Rahul and Ratty. "You're impossible," Ratty said to me often. You don't understand anything," Rahul cried out. "You're selfish, you don't care," I charged them. How scrupulously we played out our roles. I had done it with my mother, and she perhaps had done it with hers, and surely it would be the same with Ratty and her child as well. Yes, and I had to admit the truth to myself. The child I had destroyed so easily, she would have been the same too. Yet the guilt remained, even to destroy your possible future unhappiness is wrong. And how had I dared to keep the knowledge of his own child from Mohan? I dragged my mind with an effort from that time to now and confronted the fact Mohan had not returned. I stared at it, exhausted, unable to do anything with it. The bell rang loudly, startling me. How long had it been ringing? It was Nilima. "Still sleeping, Auntie." "No, I've been ringing the bell for ages. Where's Uncle? Not at home." "No." She was in her socks and kept moving gingerly from foot to foot as she talked to me. "Anyway, Auntie, Mummy asked me to tell you that Jija isn't coming today. She sent a message early morning today. She said to let you know also, okay?" "What's the matter?" "Don't know, Auntie. Even Manda hasn't turned up. Mai is growling gonna putty tomorrow and she takes leave today, grrrrrr. Bye, Auntie, I have to go." And then suddenly she stopped and peered at my face. "Aren't you well, Auntie? You don't look okay." "I am fine." I closed the door and lingered in the hall, totally at a loss. But I had to think of what I was going to do. I sat down on the sofa and all I could think of was Dada saying to AI, "Safekam bed. Honestly, AI, this monster is useless, just like you to buy it. You can neither sit on it nor can you sleep on it." And I's outraged face. But that was the past. I had to think of Mohan and me, of what had happened to us. Deceptions, lies, evasions, was this all we had been able to offer each other in our years together? The relation of man to woman is the most natural of one person to another. Karl Marx. Yes, Karl Marx it was who'd said that. Natural. When we are forever hurting, forever wronging each other. Natural. When we're forever resenting our need of each other. How wrong you were about this, Mr. Marx. Prophetically right though you may have been about so much else. J. Muqtad gently pushed the door open and looked in. "Oh. There you are. Nilima said you don't look well." "I'm all right, nothing wrong with me." I tried to smile, but the muscles of my face seemed rigid, unwilling to cooperate with me. "Mohan isn't home." "No, he had to go out." "Anyway, can I get you some breakfast?" "No, I don't need anything, and I haven't even brushed my teeth." "Do that. I'll get you something in 5 minutes." I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. When I came back after a wash, Mukta was waiting for me with a covered plate and a cup of tea. "What about you, Mukta?" "I'm fasting today, Hardalika. I made this shira for Nilima. She wanted it and Mai got into a temper." "The girls should be fasting today, not eating sweets," she said. Mukta smiled. "Do you like shira, Jaya?" "Not normally, but now it tasted ambrosial, cooked in milk, studded with raisins, fragrant with ghee and cardamoms." For a moment the memory of my Saptagiri Aji came back to me, sitting cross-legged in her room like a stern goddess, watching Appa and me eat the laddus the kakis had just made under her watchful eyes, the laddus warm and shapeless in our hands, the smell of roasting flour, of liquid brown homemade ghee and pounded cardamoms wafting about us. "Take one more, girl," Aji used to urge me. "You won't get laddus like this in your home." An obscure loyalty to AI, at whom I knew Aji's remarks had been directed, had prevented me from taking the second one, however much I wanted it, but Appa had never refused. Nor had he ever refused the heaped plate of beaten rice that had followed the laddus. He had been fussy about it. "What, no coconut?" he would exclaim and go in. In a moment, we would hear a loud crack as he broke a coconut on the pounding stone. While the kakis grated it, Appa would ask for an onion. Sacrilege in Aji's house. "Onions!" Aji would sniff angrily, but Appa always got his onion. He would smash it with his fist. No cutting board could be polluted by an onion in Aji's house, and eat it with the beaten rice with an immense gusto. Aji's nose, I remembered, had wrinkled in repugnance at the strong, acrid pungency of the onion, but she had watched him eat it without any more protests. Laddus loaded with ghee, beaten rice soaked in oil. Maybe it had been Aji who had hastened Appa's death, feeding him with all that. But people didn't know about cholesterol then, and men died leaving no guilt behind. In the last few years, Mohan had begun having a checkup twice a year. We had a file of all his reports. I had thought it a kind of reassurance, that file, a guarantee that I would not be betrayed by death again. But betrayal, a protean monster, takes many forms. I should have thought of that. Nayana came in a little later. She looked old today, dragging her body as if it was her enemy. Her eyes were red. It was obvious she had been crying. I thought of her telling me once, "My mother gave me the name Nayana because my eyes were very beautiful," she said. "And I was born," she said. She saw those eyes first. "She put kajal in my eyes every day now, Benji. I don't do it anymore. What's the use? The kajal will flow away with my tears. Thank God my mother didn't live to see my state. I've kept that kajal box for my daughter." Niana told me that Jija's son had been injured in an accident. "Must have been drunk, what else?" she said angrily. "They've all gone to the hospital, and gonna putty tomorrow, those poor children." After Nayana went, I had my bath. Washed my clothes and put them out to dry on the railings on the balcony. "Never do that," Mohan had said to me. "It doesn't look nice for people like us." It doesn't matter now, I thought, and then abruptly jerked them off the railing and draped them on the high wires in the passage. I washed the tea things, dried them with infinite care, and neatly stacked them in the right places. I scrubbed the bathroom with an old brush, so hard that the bristles fell off, and finally it was only my knuckles and the wooden base that kept knocking against the walls, the floor. I threw the brush in the dustbin, washed my hands and face, and let down my sari, which I'd tucked up. And now, I went to my bed and lay down on it, and it was like being back in the hostel again, lying on my bed, crying to myself, "I can't bear it, I can't," getting up hastily, wiping my face at a knock at the door. A face telling me, "You're room number 25, aren't you? A visitor for you." Going down to see Dada in the lounge, bursting into shameful tears when Dada said, "Jaya, not room number 25. Would you like to go back to Ambigayon?" he had asked me, nonplussed by the violence of my grief. "Shall I write to AI and Shanju Mama?" No, don't, I'll be all right." I could see the two of us sitting on the parapet across the hostel, the thundering of the sea behind us forming a somber background to the tinsely human voices around us. The cry of hawkers, the laughter and screams of children, the intimate tones of adults talking. "Have you no friends? Not even one?" Dada had sounded both irritated and concerned. "Surely you've made some friends?" "No." I shook my head, refusing to lessen my humiliation to lighten Dada's burden. "Try to make friends, Jaya. What's wrong with you? You never used to be this way in Saptagiri. What about college? Are you okay there?" College, walking along the high-roofed, daunting corridors, too scared to ask anyone where my class was, avoiding the common room with its chattering, laughing crowd, feeling as if a glaring spotlight was showing up my isolation. No. What's the use saying no to everything? You've got to make friends. We all feel a bit lost at first. I was miserable when I came here from Saptagiri, but I got out of it. I didn't mope. "Of course, if you're really unhappy, would you like to go back to Ambigayon? Shall I write to AI and Shanju Mama?" No, don't. Finally, Dada had lost his temper. "I know what you want. You want Appa and Saptagiri and that life back. But it won't ever return. It's all over, understand? Appa is dead. Get that into your head. Appa is dead." I had stood up, stared at him in hatred, and walked back into the hostel, past the brightly lit rooms full of chatting girls, thinking I'm cast out of happiness forever, tasting the words, enjoying them, and feeling my grief at the same time. And the next day, getting off the bus, almost blown off my feet by the wind, all the buttons of my duckback flung open by its violence, my hood obstinately refusing to stay in place, the tears running down my face, mingling with the rain and the spray from the sea. I had known then that it was all Appa's fault. Why had he made me feel I was someone special? Why had he made me feel different from the others? "You are not like the others, Jaya," Appa had said to me, pulling me ruthlessly out of the safe circle in which the other girls had stood. Girls who had performed pujas and come to school with turmeric-dyed threads round their wrists and necks. Girls who, it had seemed, asked for nothing more than the destiny of being wives and mothers. While I, Appa had said, and I had agreed, would get the Chatfield Prize or the Ellis Prize, go to Oxford after my graduation. "You're going to be different from the others, Jaya," Appa had assured me. That day as I stood there, the rain and wind pelting me, I had known then I did not want to be different from the others. I wanted to be in that lighted room with them, not walking past, invisible, ignored. Room number 25. It's all Appa's fault, I had thought bitterly as I ran across the road to the hostel. It's all Appa's fault for dying and messing up my life. Apo is dead. Get that into your head. Apo is dead. No more sitting on his cycle before him, snugly enclosed by his arms, feeling him pant as we come to one more incline. Appa cycling 3 miles into town to see Agi and 3 miles back home to AI again, cycling between the two women, up and down the undulating roads, his heart pumping furiously. Yes, that's right, they were responsible for his death, those two women. AI and Agi. But Agi expiated by her death. She gave up even her single meal after Appa died, and in 6 months she was dead. But AI? How can she sit there so coolly packing up as if she doesn't care that Appa is dead, as if going to Ambigayon will make it better? I'm not going to Ambigayon, I'm not. She can't make me. I was crying loud, the wooden pillar rough and rasping as I ran my hands up and down it. There was a piercing point of pain as a sliver of wood entered my palm. I looked at my palm in surprise. Clean, unscarred. That was long ago, long, long ago, and now perhaps it was Mohan who was dead. Perhaps he'd fallen out of a train like Mukta's Aaron. Perhaps he'd had a heart attack like Appa. Perhaps he'd been run over. They would bring his body home and then carry it away again. Ram Nam Satya Hai, they would chant as they took him away. And I would lie down here and watch the shadows move along the walls, the ceiling. Ram Nam Satya Hai. I sat up abruptly and tied my hair into a small, determined knot. I had to stop this, I had to get out of this, I had to get myself in hand. There was nothing wrong, nothing had happened. Mohan never would leave me. I was Jaya, Jaya for victory. You hear that, Kusum? I'm Jaya, Jaya for victory. I cocked a snook at her. Retreat, you poor, pitiful, unwanted ghost. I don't belong with you, I can't stay with you, I have so much to do. I must. Simon says kneel down, the order came and we knelt. Simon says clap your hands, and we clapped our hands. An order without Simon's name tagged on to it had been no order at all in that childhood game of ours, and we had stood rock still, unmoving. It was like that for me now, the mysterious, all-powerful Simon, the Simon who had. Brooked no rival had disappeared, and I could do nothing. I was overcome by a paralysis of will and sat staring at my slipper dangling from my toes, unable to move. A husband is like a sheltering tree. Vanatamami's pithy, unforgettable maxim came back to me, tinged with an oracular solemnity. But instantly I rejected the words. What did Vanatamami know of marriage and husbands? Remember, Jaya, the happiness of your husband and home depends entirely on you, Ramukaka had said in his pompous head-of-the-family manner, and I, naive fool that I was, had bridled at the importance the statement had conferred on me. Be good to Mohan, Jaya, Dada had advised me when I was leaving Ambigayon after our wedding. Oh yes, there had been certainly no dearth of advice when I got married, but nobody had bothered to tell me what to do when a marriage was over. Kusum, yes, there was Kusum who had opted for madness and death. Opted? No, I was wrong. She had not opted for anything. She had been pushed into it. We'd all helped to push her into that well. No, Kusum was of no use to me. Her death was as futile as her life. It provided me with no clues. But then who could give me an answer? I thought of Kamalakaki. How will I live without him, Jaya? How will I live? She had cried out to me when I had gone to see her after Laxman Kaka's death, her hands clutching mine in a painful grip. Janu had brought her from Saptagiri after his father's death and had, like a dutiful son, installed her in his house. Both he and his wife Medha had been kind, but Kamalakaki had wept unceasingly. Her face, which had been plump and jolly when she was just one of the Kakis, had been bewildered, like that of a boxer who's taken too many bad blows. How will I live without him? But there was AI. Yes, how could I have forgotten AI who had learnt to live without Appa? AI who, when her marriage was over, had gone back to her home in Ambigayon as if her 20 years with Appa in Saptagiri had been only an interlude. Why didn't you write and tell me of Aji's death? I had asked her. I didn't think of it, she had replied. Though I had not believed her then, I knew now that she had spoken. The truth, Aji and Saptagiri had meant nothing to her after Appa's death. Even her hatred for her mother-in-law had not been able to survive it. I thought of her room in Ambigayon. There was nothing of her married life in it except one large, framed photograph of Appa's. That seemed to glare at you menacingly as you entered her room. At some time, AI had hung a sandalwood garland round it. I had lifted it. Idly one day, and a swarm of mosquitoes had buzzed out angrily at me. I had removed the garland then, and AI had not even noticed its absence. 20 years and nothing left. Yet AI had once held my hand and saying, "How like your father's your hands are, Jaya," had begun caressing them, and it had been obvious the caress had not been meant for me at all. But I had forgotten. AI was a widow. There was something positive, something definite about widowhood. AI looking earnestly into the mirror, applying her kumkum with the tip of her ring finger, gently spreading the red powder, making the circle larger and larger, and finally a large, perfect red circle shining in the middle of her forehead. That was marriage. And then the blankness, the empty space, how large I's forehead was, how white and bony, that was widowhood. A clean, definite line between the two. But for me, close the doors, stay in, and you're safe. But what happened when everyone went out and you were left alone inside? Why hadn't they told me that it wasn't the poor drenched crow standing on the doorstep who posed the danger? Why hadn't they warned me that the threat, the hazard, lay inside? A wave of sickness overcame me and I found myself longing for someone to come and comfort me, to tell me it was all right, to reassure me that I had done no wrong. I longed for a soft, motherly breast to cry on, and then I had to smile. I had never gone to her for comfort. Not to AI, not to the Aggies, not to the Cockies. No woman ever, but there had been Lena. The sound of the bell ringing penetrated the fuzzy confusion enveloping my mind. I dragged myself to the door and opened it. Mukta and I stared silently at each other for a moment. It was Mukta who spoke first. "Jaya, are you all right?" "Of course. They always say they're all right." "But I'm not they, I'm us. I must never forget that. Have you had any lunch?" "Had I?" "Yes, no, I don't remember. Oh yes, I had your shira. But that was, my God, hours ago, even before Neela went to school. Haven't you cooked anything?" "No. Shall I get you something?" "No, Mukta, I don't want anything. Honestly, I'm not hungry." "You can't starve yourself until Mohan returns." "Until Mohan returns? Oh, it's only for today. I'll get some vegetables and cook something at night, and Mohan should be back in 2 days." "Oh, look, Jaya, I'm going out for a while. Neela will be back from school soon. I've got some bread for her tea. I don't want to leave it at home. You know how Mai is. We had enough arguments over the shira in the morning. Shall I leave it here? Just some bread and bhajias. And why don't you have some? The bread is fresh from the bakery." I nodded my head, anything to get rid of her. But when Nilima came and said, "Join me, Auntie," I was suddenly ravenous. I tore at the loaf and stuffed it into my mouth. "Have some of these, Auntie." Nilima offered me the bhajias. "Are you sure you don't want them, Lena?" "Lena." Nilima stared at me surprised, offended. "Who's Lena? Why Lena, Auntie?" "Sorry, Nilima, just a slip of the tongue. I meant Neela." But when Nilima had gone, I was left with Lena smiling at me across the table in the hostel dining room, holding out a plate saying, "Here, have mine, I'm not hungry. I had some samosas in the college canteen today." I ate her plate of bhajias hungrily, feeling faintly ashamed of my greed. Feeling better. Lena asked me, "You're in the room next to mine, aren't you?" I nodded, wondering fearfully, has she heard me sobbing? Will she say something about it? But she didn't. "Finished?" she asked. "Let's go on to the balcony." We struggled with the bolts and bars that had been intended to keep us out of the balcony until the monsoon was over. The wind pinned us to the wall as we watched the monsoon sea dash over the parapet wall and fall in a fine spray across the road. Our faces and lips felt salty and sticky. The lights on the road came on instantaneously as we stood there, and Marine Drive became a shimmering, gleaming river, lights moving gently on it. Bombay is not ugly, I thought. Bombay is beautiful. I laughed aloud in sheer happiness, and Lena laughed with me. Yes, it had been Lena who had pulled me out of that ugly, self-hatting despair, Lena who had taken away my bitter sense of failure, of worthlessness. "What college are you in?" "Elphinstone." "Oh," she had made a face, "all those swanks." And suddenly it had been all right. There was nothing wrong with me. It was the others, all those swanks. Yet I had dropped Lena with a thud when someone had told me that she was not a good girl, that she spent her weekends with a married man. "What's the matter, Jaya? Why did you return those books in such a hurry? I got them specially for you. Why didn't you open the door last night? I came for a chat. Why didn't you wait for me for breakfast today? Didn't you see me waving at you yesterday? Why, Jaya, why?" At last the questions had ceased and there had been silence. And no more Lena. I hadn't cared because I had other friends by then. Now, as I cleared the table of crumbs, I concocted an apologia for Lena. "I'm sorry, Lena. I was stupid, naive, ignorant. I was a narrow-minded idiot, and the kind of person you were was beyond my comprehension then. Forgive me, Lena. I didn't intend to be cruel." But Lena hadn't forgiven me. I met her years later and recognizing her had involuntarily smiled at her, but she had passed me by, her face blank and closed up. No, she hadn't forgiven me. Why should she? And now I thought it will happen to me too. I will meet Mohan somewhere someday and he will pass me by, his face blank and closed up. Hadn't it already happened to me? The day when, at some exclusive function, I had got left behind, my entry pass with Mohan who had already gone past the barricades. The policeman had stolidly put out his arm to prevent me from going in, and I had waited, frantically trying to catch Mohan's attention. But Mohan's eyes, it seemed, had been unable to cross the barrier. Once I thought he had seen me, but his eyes had gone through me and I had felt cold. It had been the children who, tugging at Mohan's arms, had drawn his attention to me. Mohan had come to me then, and the policeman, scarcely giving the pass a glance, had dropped his arm. Drawing a huge breath of relief, I had followed Mohan into the enclosure. And then it had happened. Looking at the people around us, couples like us, all of them with 2 children, I had had a queer sensation. As if I was seeing the 2 of us over and over again, and repeated images of myself, a woman in a crisp cotton sari, with huge dark glasses, shaped eyebrows and short hair all about me. If ever I had wanted to be like the others, I had achieved my desire at that moment. I was so exactly like the others, I was almost invisible. I had felt annihilated. And then I had seen Mohan smiling, talking to someone animatedly, looking triumphant, as if to be inside the barrier was somehow for him the apogee of his life. And once again I was outside the enclosure and he was inside it, his eyes glancing through me. But hadn't we had that barrier between us always? I should have seen it. The time I had just returned from Saptagiri where, during a visit to the townhouse, I had found Ramu Kaka excited, talking to me freely as he had so rarely done. He had shown me a family tree he had prepared. I've been able to go back for nearly 200 years. There are a few gaps, of course, but I'll fill them up eventually. Look, Jaya, this is our branch. This is our grandfather, your great-grandfather, and here's father and then us, Laxman, Vasu, and me. And here are the boys, Shridhar, Janu, Dinkar, Ravi. But Ramu Kaka, I'd exclaimed, I'm not here. You! He had looked up, irritated by the interruption, impatient at my stupidity. How can you be here? You don't belong to this family. You're married, you're now part of Mohan's family. You have no place here. At this point, as I had been narrating this story to Mohan, Mohan had smiled. Of course, your Ramu Kaka is right. You belong to my family now. But. I'd stammered, trying to explain to him what Ramu Kaka's statement had done to me, trying to tell him I felt not just inconsequential but wholly blotted out. But Mohan had turned away. With that pleasantry, it had been over for him. And I had swallowed my questions, the questions I'd wanted to ask Ramu Kaka too, but hadn't dared, for no one ever questioned Ramu Kaka, the head of the family. Okay, I'd wanted to ask Ramu Kaka, if I don't belong to this family, what about the Kakis and AI? They married into this family, didn't they? Why are they not here? And what about Aji, who single-handedly kept the family together? Why isn't she here? But I had said nothing, neither to Ramu Kaka, nor to Mohan. Aji should be pleased with me. I had learnt it at last, no questions. No retorts, only silence. I gave up my writing because of you, I said to Mohan, and he seemed astonished. Why didn't I speak then? Why didn't I explain? Why didn't I remind him of the day he had come back from work carrying a magazine he had thrust at me, saying, Your story is here. My story? Feverishly, I had turned over the pages and stared at my name, entranced. Then I had turned to Mohan. Oh God, Mohan, I've won a prize. It's the story I sent for the contest. It's got a prize. Mohan's face had finally silenced my babble. Jaya, he had said dully, how could you have done it? How could I have done what? They will all know now, all those people who read this and know us, they will know that these 2 persons are us. They will think I am this kind of a man. They will think I am this man. How can I look anyone in the face again? And you, how could you write these things? How could you write such ugly things? How will you face people after this? I had realized it then, even in the state I had been in, that he had not been angry but hurt. He had looked as if I had wounded him. How can you reveal us? How can you reveal our lives to the world in this way? I had known then that it hadn't mattered to Mohan that I had written a good story, a story about a couple, a man who could not reach out to his wife except through her body. For Mohan, it had mattered that people might think the couple was us, that the man was him. To Mohan, I had been no writer, only an exhibitionist. But it had not been self-revelation. I should have said it to Mohan. Then, even if some of the details had been from our life, it had not been a relating of my experience, but a transmuting of it into something quite different. But I had not said this to Mohan. I had been ashamed. It had sounded too pretentious, as if I had been taking something that was after all only a hobby too seriously. And so I had been silent. And looking at his stricken face, I had been convinced I had done him wrong, and I had stopped writing after that. Perhaps, if Mohan had been angry, if he had shouted and raged at me, if he had forbidden me to write, perhaps I would have fought him and gone on. But he had only shown me his hurt, and I had not been able to counter that. I had relinquished them instead, all those stories that had been taking shape in me because I had been scared of hurting Mohan, scared of jeopardizing the only career I had, my marriage. As I stalked about the room thinking of these things, shaping the sentences, a savage anger began mounting in me. Yes, it was all Mohan's fault. I had shaped myself so resolutely to his desires all these years, yet what was I left with now? Nothing, just emptiness and silence. Even Kusum had left me and gone away. She had seen me become a failure and gone away satisfied. They had deserted me, all of them. "My dear," she had said to me, that white woman, the missionary with the mad, faded blue eyes. "My dear," she had said, "accept the love of Jesus Christ and you will get eternal happiness. He has promised us that. Imagine none of our loved ones will ever die. They will be with us forever. Poor little mad woman who could not even remember from where you had come. Did they all desert you too, so that you began going around trying to find someone to share your dream of eternal happiness, of everlasting life? Believe it with me," her eyes had pleaded, but smart aleck that I had been, I had laughed at her. "Won't the world get overcrowded if no one ever dies?" I had asked, and the poor woman had gone away looking for someone more willing to share her dream. Why hadn't I been kinder to her? Bits of fluff flew about the unswept room as I walked up and down, banging into the bed, the chair, the dressing table. I should have at least swept the place. The thought forced itself on me, and angrily I kicked the little soot-darkened bits of fluff back under the bed, but on my return journey, they flew out to meet me again. There was no room for my anger in the room. The silence, the stillness frightened me. I had to do something. I picked up the cups and plates Nilima and I had used, piled them into the sink and began washing them up, making a loud clatter, like Vanitamami, that great clangor of pots and pans. I opened the tap full and stared at the water swirling into the drain, carrying away the dregs of all that we had eaten. Nilima and I scrubbed the sink, attacking its mottled surface as if it was my enemy. And then it was all done, and with the returning silence, the truth came to me. I hadn't stopped writing because of Mohan. I could not possibly make Mohan the scapegoat for my failures, for I had written even after that confrontation with him, stories that had been rejected, stories that had come back to me, stories that I had hidden here in this house. It was dark when I came to the last page. I stood up and the papers fell off my lap, joining the chaotic heap of old books and magazines on the floor. I switched on the light and the room was flooded with a harsh brightness that made me blink. I picked up the books and magazines that I'd pulled out to get at the file I had wanted and shoved them back into the small wooden cupboard that rocked drunkenly as I banged them back on the shelves. Now only this file was left, my rejected stories, my failures. Of course, Mohan had nothing to do with these. He didn't even know I'd written them. Kamat had been the only one I'd talked to about them. I'd had to tell him because I had needed him, and yet I had regretted my impulse. When not referring to my request, he had asked me instead, "You want to write under a false name," in a voice that had somehow offended me. As if he'd realized my feelings, he'd gone on, "You want to use my address for your mail? Sure, go ahead. You can use my typewriter too if you want to." He'd then suggested a name I could use. Generous, I'd thought him then, but I was not so sure now. There had been something withering about that generosity, like a person saying, "Use my knife to kill yourself if you want to, it makes no difference to me." But he had never said anything. He had always handed me back my rejected stories without a word, until my story about the child widow came back. But it was I who had made him read that story, forced him to speak. This had been Appa's story. I'd heard him narrating it as a child. When I'd written it, to me it was still Appa's story. Its rejection had hurt enormously. Still smarting with that hurt, I had sent it to another magazine, then another and another. A kind of terrible obstinacy had propelled me into sending it to one magazine after another. They had all rejected it. Even the magazine that called itself Crusader of Women's Causes had sent it back. "Why don't you try a women's magazine?" An editor I'd gone to personally with the story had suggested. "This middle-class stuff, women's problems," he'd said at the end of a didactic statement of his purposes, his aims. "It's too distanced from real life, real problems, if you know what I mean. Send this to a women's magazine." Irrelevant, middle-class, bourgeois, with each word I had felt myself dwindling. I hadn't gone home that day. I had come here upstairs to Kamat. I had thrust my story at him. "Read it," I had said. "Read it and tell me what's wrong with it." The moment he finished, I had burst out. "And now tell me why it's irrelevant. Because it happened 60 years ago and not today. I'm talking of cruelty, and what does it matter whether it happened in Vietnam or Bangladesh, whether it happened to Anne Frank or a 13-year-old widow? Yes, she was only 13. Suddenly I'd paused and thought. I was 13 too when I'd heard Appa telling this story to his friends. She was only a child, and they humiliated her, disgraced her in public because she hadn't shaved her head. They called her a whore, a daughter of a whore. I remember Appa saying that. And that man says to me, I had made a wild attempt to mimic the man's tone, "Why don't you send this to a women's magazine?" As if women's experiences are of interest only to women. All this anger, Kamat had grinned at me. "Why didn't you use it here?" He had tapped the paper so hard that it had torn. Yes, the tear was still here. "Why didn't you use that anger in your story? There's none of it here. There isn't even a personal view, a personal vision. I'll tell you what's really wrong with your story. It's too restrained. Spew out your anger in your writing, woman, spew it out. Why are you holding it in?" "Why? Because no woman can be angry. Have you ever heard of an angry young woman?" "I've seen them, angry women, I mean." "All ages," he had grinned again. "Heard them as well, banging pots and pans. This would have been a better story if you'd banged your pots and pans in it. It's a joke to you, but I know what it is. A woman can never be angry. She can only be neurotic." Hysterical, frustrated. There's no room for anger in my life, no room for despair either. There's only order and routine. Today I have to change the sheets. Tomorrow scrub the bathrooms. The day after clean the fridge. Spare me your complexes. And you're a fool if you think I was joking. I'm warning you, beware of this women are the victims theory of yours. It'll drag you down into a soft, squishy bog of self-pity. Take yourself seriously, woman. Don't skulk behind a false name. And work if you want others to take you seriously. This scribbling now and then, I don't have the time. Yes, that's an easy way out. It's so much easier to be the martyr who'd have done so much if only. He had twisted his magnificent voice into a feminine falsetto, doing a much better job of mimicking than I had done. If only I had the time. But I'm a wife and mother first, my home and children come first to me, blah, blah, blah. Pa, the fact is you're scared. Scared. Scared of writing, scared of failing. Middle class, bourgeois, upper caste, distanced from real life, scared of writing, scared of failing. Oh God, I had thought, I can't take any more. Even a worm has a hole it can crawl into. I had mine as Mohan's wife, as Rahul's and Ratty's mother. And so I had crawled back into my hole. I had felt safe there, comfortable, unassailable. And so I had stopped writing. It hadn't been Mohan's fault at all. And it had been just a coincidence, though it had helped, that just then Mohan had propelled me into that other kind of writing. "I encouraged you," he had said to me. He was right. But I went on with my chest-beating fit of penitence. Mohan had not forced me to do that kind of writing. I'd gone into it myself, with my eyes wide open. "Why don't you write these things? What do you call them?" "Middles." "That's right, Middles. Look at this one now. Good stuff. I'm sure you can write better than this." And so I had begun. I wrote light, humorous pieces about the travails of a middle-class housewife. Nothing serious. Oh no, nothing serious. Look, no more skulking behind a false name. I'd proudly flourished a paper at Kamat. "Does it matter who writes these things?" he'd said contemptuously. "You know something, I never can imagine you writing this. This you, I mean. I can see the woman who writes this." He'd narrowed his eyes as if focusing on some vision. "She's plump, good-humored, pea-brained, but shrewd, devious, skimming over life, and so Sita had been born." But Kamat had indignantly refused to take the credit for her. "Don't saddle me with the burden of having fathered that obnoxious creation of yours." But Mohan had loved her. So had the editors and the readers. And for me, she had been the means through which I had shut the door firmly on all those other women who had invaded my being, screaming for attention. Women I had known I could not write about, because they might, it was just possible, resemble Mohan's mother, or aunt, or my mother or aunt. Sita was safer. I didn't have to come out of the safe hole I'd crawled into to write about Sita. I could stay there, warm and snug. So Jaya, you're a writer, Laxman Kaka had said to me when I'd met him in Saptagiri after Sita's success. Your father always wanted to be a writer. I remember Vasu was always scribbling. He did have that one book of poems published before he died anyway. And now you're a writer like him, eh? Not like my father, I had thought then in a vicious anger, never like my father. For they had stayed with me through the years, all those unsold books of Appas, that collection of poems he had so unwisely published himself. I had not been able to forget those heaps of unsold. Books lying all over our house, jammed inside drawers, piled on window sills, on tops of cupboards, crammed inside them so that they had fallen out each time we had opened one. Why don't you sell them off as trash? AI had asked him once, and I had realized even then the immense cruelty of it. They're just cluttering up the place. One day the white ants are going to feast off them. That's all. Later she became sentimental about Appa's writing, forgetting that when leaving Saptagiri she would have sold all those books as rubbish if Aji, on hearing of it from me, hadn't asked Ramu Kaka to take all the copies to the townhouse. I had kept 2 copies with me, more an act of defiance than of sentiment. Such bad stuff, Appa's poetry, how could that intellect, that sense of humor have churned up such sugary, sentimental stuff? Those 2 books flashed red beacons of warning at me each time I saw them. This is what happens when you imagine you're a writer. This is how your failure is made explicit, proclaimed loudly to the world. Books no one wants to read, books no one will buy, books destined for the trash man, for white ants. The fact is you're scared. Scared of failing. Was he right? Had I been truly scared of failing like Appa? No. Why did I have to bring Appa into this? Damn him for saying such a thing to me, and damn Freud for foisting our fathers on us all our lives. This had nothing to do with Appa. This was my life. A writer, Laxman Kaka, I had replied. No, I'm not really a writer. I just write a bit here and there for magazines and papers. Small articles and stories. I'm not a writer. That's right, keep saying that. If you don't commit yourself, you'll never fail. Kamet again. Damn you, you're dead, aren't you? I saw you lying there on the floor, a look of surprise on your face, while the radio poured out your own voice extolling some brand of tea. I saw you lying there, the newspaper by your side flapping with monotonous regularity as the fan turned over its pages. I knew you were dead, and yet I instantly walked out on you, leaving you with only your voice for company. Now, why don't you leave me alone? Why don't you stay dead and leave me alone? Yes, he was dead. The scene came back to me, Kamet on the floor near the sofa, as if he had fallen off it, his eyes glassy and wide open, vomit dribbling out of the corner of his mouth. The smell of vomit in the room, of urine too, as if he had voided himself in the moment of dying. A sordid scene, a sordid ending. And what had I done to redeem it? After a moment when I had been aware of nothing but the furious pumping of my heart, I had walked away from him, as if a small hard finger was in my back, steadily pushing me away from him. I had come down here to this place, picked up my bag, locked the place and gone back home to Churchgate. And at night after dinner I had gone to bed as usual, as if nothing had happened, as if none of it had happened, but it had. I could not escape the truth any longer. He was dead. Why don't you stay dead and leave me alone? Leave you alone? Why, it's you who won't leave me alone, it's you who won't let me go. It's only with the dead that we can have a perfect relationship. There are no knots, no awkward tangles here. We can mold the dead to our desires, to suit our purposes. But this man, he resisted all my attempts to manipulate him, to manipulate our relationship. I could see him grinning at my discomfiture as I failed. And yet I knew I had to puzzle it out, to put the bits and pieces together and see what form it took, my relationship with this man. It refused to take any shape at all. It just slipped about, frighteningly fluid. Perhaps the fact that for a long time, why, till the very end, I didn't know how to address him was significant. Everyone calls me just Kamet, he had said to me, but I had never been able to address him that way. He, however, had called me Jaya Wright from the very first day. I had envied him the ease with which he had used my name, plunging into an intimacy that would have scared me off if he hadn't made it seem so natural, so asexual. Come and join me, he had said that first day, when I had gone to him with his letter that had been wrongly delivered to us. Join him? It had taken me a moment to realize what he had meant. No, I've had my lunch. Pity, you're missing something. I'm a very good cook. He obviously was. I had stared at the expert way in which he had turned the chapatiz, flip, flip, at the deft manner in which he had dealt with something else that was cooking on the other stove at the same time. I had stared, astonished at his absorption, his skill, and even more at his unself-consciousness. He hadn't seemed to mind being found doing something that was to me unmanly. On the contrary, he had been proud of his cooking ability. He had bragged about it. Never seen a man cooking. He'd asked me that first day. You look surprised. I learned it out of necessity. I'd said nothing then, but later, when I had come to know him better, I had confessed my uneasiness. I find it odd, a bit unnatural actually, to have a man ask me for recipes and tell me how to cook things. Unnatural? Certainly not. It's very natural for a man who loves. Eating, have you read Tagore's novels? He'd asked, seemingly going off at a tangent. Have you noticed how the women make the men totally dependent and helpless in practical, everyday living by doing everything for them? And how the men relate to the women only by making a declaration of their helplessness? Mother, I'm hungry, that sort of thing. Well, that seems to me unnatural. The fact is, he had gone on, I don't want to concede to any woman power over me. Sex. Yes, that's one area where I do concede that power, but nowhere else. Another time he'd said, I like my women thin, all those bosomy, fat-hipped women. He had sketched generous curves in the air with a swift, skillful finger. I've done for magazine covers and stories, they make me sick. I prefer clean, spare lines in a human being. You. For example, it was then that he had said to me, your name is like your face. At first it had seemed strange to have a man talk so freely to me. All the men I'd known till then had put on a different face, a different tone, a false smile when they spoke to me. It was always made clear that we were not on the same level. But this man, it had been a revelation to me that two people, a man and a woman, could talk this way. With this man, I had not been a woman. I had been just myself, Jaya. There had been an ease in our relationship I had never known in any other. There had been nothing I could not say to him. And he too, or had he been playing a very devious kind of honesty game with me? I had begun to have a suspicion that he played the honesty game only when it suited him, that he often cheated. I'd had my first moment of doubt the day I heard a voice on the radio during a commercial, a voice that had sounded faintly familiar as it chanted the virtues of some product. It had been his defensive, holding his breath air that had triggered off the realization. Why, that's your voice, I had exclaimed. For the first time I had seen him embarrassed, unable to retort at once. Then, as if he had realized denial was not possible, he had said, yes. It was becoming difficult the more I thought of him, the more complicated his character seemed. The more I tried to put the pieces together, the less possible it became to see the shape of our relationship. Love. But what did I know of love? Even the love stories I'd written, they had been as if I had gone on spinning out the fantasies of my adolescence. Love. No, I knew nothing of it. I knew only my need of Mohan, and his need of me. And yet it was to Kamat I'd spoken that day. I told him things I'd never been able to speak of, not to Dada, not to Mohan. I had been talking about my parents, and at something I had said, he smiled, his full-blooded smile that came out all the way to meet you. Do you know how much like a sulky, glowering teenager you look when you talk of your parents? What did they do to you? His tone had been light, but I had answered him seriously. My mother made me homeless. She sold our home. She never said a word to me. We're going to Ambagayon for a while, she said. And after we went there, she said, we're going to stay here now. For always. Grow up, woman. She must have needed the money. Didn't you once tell me your father died leaving a lot of debts? And what about they? Poor woman, she lost her home too, didn't she? And your father, what's your grouse against him? He died. He had begun to laugh at that, his resonant, almost theatrical laugh. I must say you have the monstrous ego of a child. You talk as if death is an option. Don't you know it's an inevitability? It's not just that he died, it's what he gave me a wrong idea of myself, of my whole life changed. I had been unable to speak, fumbling for the words at first, but soon they had come. It was the first day of my SSC exams. I came out of the hall in the evening and one of the girls, there was a group of them, they fell silent when they saw me, and this girl came to me and said, Jaya, go home at once, it seems your father is not well. I didn't believe her. Go at once, she said, but I didn't hurry. Why should I? Nothing was wrong, nothing could possibly be wrong, the girl had confused me with someone else. I dawdled, chatting about that day's paper I stood at. The corner with Seema talking about the next day's exam. I doodled with a twig, I remember, in the dust. A circle with a dot in the center. I can still remember that, I can see that circle. And then Seema went and I was left alone. I didn't want to go home, but I found myself walking home. Then I was walking faster and faster. I was running. Let it be all right, let there be nothing wrong, I prayed to God, let it be. All right, I prayed desperately as I ran. I flung promises recklessly, anything, only let it be all right. It was all right. I stood there, taking deep breaths, my chest hurting, cramps in my stomach, my legs trembling, my body dripping sweat. But it was all right. The house looked peaceful and calm. That fool of a girl, I thought. She's frightened me for nothing. And then I found that the house was locked. I tugged at the huge lock in disbelief. How could they lock me out? Didn't they know I had to prepare for my next day's exams? And I was tired and hungry. Finally, I just sat there on the doorstep, waiting, my mind a blank. When I saw Dada cycling towards the house, I felt remote and detached. He was cycling slowly, awkwardly, as if he had only just learnt how to ride. He swayed, the bike wobbled, the bell rang in small continual tinkles as the bike bumped over the uneven road. Carefully, he closed the gate and bolted it before coming to me. I saw his face. I wouldn't let him speak, I didn't want him to say it, I didn't want to hear it. No, I said over and over again, no. He caught hold of me and shook me until my teeth chattered and I could no longer say anything, not even no. Jaya, he said, Jaya, listen to me, Appa is dead. I will always remember that moment, Dada's face distorted as if with rage, his voice saying, Jaya, Appa is dead. And then he began to sob. The bike fell down, and he sat there on the gravel Appa had got from somewhere to save the house from muddy footprints. Dada sat there and began to sob. I could say nothing. My jaws seemed gripped in a painful cramp that made it impossible for me to open my mouth. In a while, Dada quietened down. I can remember the silence and the hardness of the huge lock against the back of my head. I wanted Dada to open the door, to let me get in so that I could eat something, start studying for the next day. We have to go, Dada said. They're waiting for us in Aji's house, Appa is there, we have to go. And again I could say nothing but no over and over again, until Ramu Kaka came and took us both away. I wouldn't look at the thing that lay on the ground, I wouldn't go near it, but Aji wouldn't leave me alone. Go and touch his feet, she said. Take his blessings, she said. It's for the last time. She pushed me, Aji who never touched anyone for fear of defiling her pure state, she pushed me towards him. I closed my eyes and still I could feel Aji's small, hard finger in my back pushing me. But it was not Appa, it could never be Appa. Do well. Jaya, he had said to me in the morning, showing me a V for victory sign. I named you Jaya Victory, he had said to me so often. But now they took him away and everything was over. I went for my exams the next day. Dado insisted, he wouldn't let me off. They all said to leave me alone, all of them except AI, she said nothing. But Dada wouldn't leave me alone. He took me to the examination hall. He sat outside while I answered my papers. I can't write, Dada, I can't remember anything, I'd cried. And for a while I was blank. But soon things started coming back to me and I began writing. Once I found I'd written, Appa is dead, and a huge sob tore itself out of me. They all stared at me and I pretended it wasn't me, but I was blank again. I finished the exam somehow. Dada came with me every day. He sat out all the hours until the bell rang and I came out. Then AI sent Ravi and me to Ambagayon. I fell ill in Ambagayon, and when I came out of it, I knew AI had sold our house. We had no home anymore. We had to stay in Shanju Mama's house in Ambagayon. Dada went back to Bombay, and there was nothing left. There were no more words, and suddenly I had realized I was crying. And he was holding me, but it had meant nothing. It had been warm and comforting, like wearing Appa's coat on a chilly night, like sitting before him on his bike. And then he had said Jaya, and I had looked up and seen it was not Appa. Oh God, it was not Appa. And it was not Kamat either, the man to whom I'd been telling all these things. It had frightened me to find myself with this stranger. I had made a quick, flurried movement as if to get away from him, but it had been he who had released me first. You told me once, he had said calmly and reflectively, as if we had been discussing something abstract, about your grandmother's purity rituals, about how she had to wash her sari in a state of purity so that she could be pure when she wore the sari later. Pursuit of happiness, it's like that, a meaningless, unending exercise, like a puppy chasing its tail. At that moment, I had scarcely heard his words, scarcely understood what he had been saying to me. Instead, as he had moved away from me, I had seen him, as if for the first time. And the man, graying, middle-aged, bulky, had metamorphosed into someone entirely different. I saw him as a man whose life was structured to loneliness. And then he had said Jaya once again, and this time he held my face lightly within his palms, so light a touch that I had scarcely felt his hands. "Your name is like your face," he had said to me once, and passed his fingers lightly over my face. And the touch had meant nothing. But this time, his eyes had looked steadily, almost dispassionately at me, and my body had responded to that look, that voice, that touch. I had almost felt his body on mine, becoming a part of mine. I had felt his mouth on mine. I had almost been able to smell and taste his lips. The body's response is so much simpler, so much more direct. Is it possible that it is therefore more likely to be right? Even now, I have no answer to that. At that moment, however, I had instantaneously rejected the body's response. I had moved away from him, from that scarcely touching grasp. I had left him without a word. There had been no anger in me when I had done that. There had been no outrage either. There had been nothing but an overwhelming urge to respond to him with my body, the equally overwhelming certainty of my mind that I could not do so. Later, there had been confusion. Jaya, he had said, and I had become only Jaya. It had annihilated Mohan entirely. It had frightened me the way it had annihilated Mohan entirely. I had gone back some days later. I had gone not knowing why I was going or what I was going to say to him. I had climbed up the stairs, mechanically counting them as I had always done, feeling as if time had frozen since I had turned away from him, and he would be waiting for me still, the same pose, hands fallen at sides, the same look on his face. But I had found him dead, glassy-eyed, foul-smelling and dead, and I had walked away from him. That night, while having dinner, I had thought, someone I know is dead. I saw him dead. And I had been detached from that woman who had seen him, remote from that experience. But later, in the bathroom preparing for bed, the tears had cascaded over. It had been like a sudden hemorrhage. The racking sobs had torn me apart as I had tried to contain them. I had stayed there, crouching on the floor, my head resting on the toilet seat, my chest hurting, my throat raw and painful until it was over. Then I had washed myself, my face, my hands, my feet, and gone in to Mohan. I had waited patiently until he had finished reading and turned off the light. Then, deliberately, I had turned to him. I had touched him and caressed him until he had responded, until he had been aroused and made love to me. The relation of man to woman is the most natural of one person to another. Natural. There's only treachery, only deceit, only betrayal. Part 4. Jija quickly insinuated herself into the house, Manda just a step behind her. It was not so much the time or the manner of her coming, but her face that made me exclaim, "Jija, what is it?" Her green-tattooed hand trembled as she passed it over Manda's rough, tousled head. "Tai, our Rajaram, he is in the hospital." "Yes, I heard that. Nayana told me. An accident," she said. "What happened?" "They hit him, Tai. They took out their knives and stabbed him, all those goondas." Her enforced composure deserted her and her face broke up. It looked ugly in its total lack of restraint. It reminded me of a woman I had seen running after a funeral procession, arms outstretched, hair flying wildly about a distorted face, mouth open in ceaseless, raucous wails. He was drunk. All those others, those scoundrels, they got him drunk. They drank with his money, and when he had no more money, they made him ask for more drink without money. He said something to those men when they refused him. He was drunk, Tai. He didn't know what he was saying, but what do they care? They took out their knives and stabbed him all over, and then they left him on the footpath to die. She broke down once again, and I was conscious of a faint disappointment. But what had I expected of Jija? "Here, Tai." Manda, who had been a passive spectator till now, looking intently from face to face, her own expressionless, spoke for the first time. "They hit him here and here and here." Manda jabbed at her own scrawny body, illustrating Jija's words. "There was blood everywhere." Tai. Jija wiped her eyes and her face vigorously with her sari, and still holding the ends of it in her two hands, spread them in a supplicatory gesture before me. The gesture restored dignity to her. It was amazing how easily and effortlessly she had managed to move away from her usual muteness to this dramatic expression of grief. "Tai, help us." "Me? What can I do?" "He's in hospital. They've done an operation on him. They have given him blood, a lot of blood, but he is serious. If he dies, what will?" Happen to this child, she and her brothers, poor little ones, they will be fatherless. The word she actually used for the children was lekris, a word full of love, tenderness, and compassion. And that girl let her have her kumkum on her forehead. What is a woman without that? Her husband may be a drunkard, but as long as he is alive, no one will dare cast an eye on her. If he dies, she is young and foolish. Jija, what can I do? If you speak to the doctor, Tai, what doctor? Which hospital is he in? Sion Hospital, Tai. If you speak to the doctor there, they will look after him better, they will give him special care. Otherwise, no one cares, no one is bothered about poor patients, they won't even tell us anything if we ask them. They bark at us as if we're dogs. But gee, I don't know the doctor, I don't know any doctor there. That doctor, the big doctor there, he lived here with your brother. I saw him here, I used to work for them sometimes, there were 3 of them. This doctor, he was tall and thin, what is his name? What is it, Manda? Dr. Vyas, Manda said promptly. Han, that one. I remembered the man. But Jija, that was so long ago, I scarcely knew him. He was my brother's friend, he won't know me now. And don't worry, they will look after Rajaram quite well. Who says they do? Doctors don't neglect their patients, not when they're serious. And if you give the ayahs and ward boys some money, they'll be all right too. If you need money, no, Tai, we don't need any money. I was rebuffed and annoyed with Jija. I thought of the blind beggar woman who, with a baby on her lap and a little girl tethered to her bike. A string had sat on the pavement under our window, chanting the whole day, a paisa for a blind woman, a paisa for her baby. I had dropped a 10 paisa coin into her tin each time I had passed her. It isn't right, encouraging her, Mohan had said angrily. She could be a fraud, someone may be paying her to beg, it's an easy way to make money, possibly the children aren't hers at all, but none of that had mattered to me. I had been immensely grateful to the blind woman. She had made it so easy for me to feel good, just drop a 10 paisa coin. But Jija refused to make things easy for me. We don't need money, we can always borrow some. But you just talk to the doctor, Tai, he will remember you, he will listen to you. Saheb is a big officer, you are his wife. Once as a child, when we had come to Bombay, I had written my name in the sand on the beach, taking infinite pains over the writing. How stunned I'd been a little later to see nothing there. There was just blankness, the sea had erased everything. You are his wife. We will never forget your help, Tai. We will carry the burden of our obligation on our heads all our lives. I'll leave this child with you. She'll do all your work, anything you want, as long as you need her. Manda smiled at me, a smile of complicity. She seemed to have no misgivings at being signed away, a bonded laborer so lightly. She'll sleep here in your house until Saheb comes back. Nayana was telling me Saheb has gone away. It was like being in that crazy recurrent dream of mine. I was looking for a toilet. I was desperate. I had to find one. I'd disgrace myself if I didn't find one at once. And yes, there it was, the immense relief, and then the overpowering shame as I realized I was in a public place surrounded by people staring at me steadily and silently. I struggled to find words to rebut the shamming charge, Saheb has gone away, but before I could say anything Jija went on, her tone suddenly practical now. She seemed to have taken my agreement for granted. Manda was chivied away. Chal, what are you doing here, standing and staring? Go and finish the vessels. Our plans were laid before us, Manda's and mine. Manda would sleep here tonight. In the morning, she would finish whatever work there was and take me to the hospital where I would talk to the doctor. S.K. Vyas. Skinny Vyas. I could hear Dada introducing him to me with a grin, and the face and name now came together with a click. When Jija left us, Manda burst into a torrent of words. She gave me every detail of her dramatic day. When they told us what had happened, AI fainted. Aji and I had to pour a whole pot of water on here. Aji and AI went to the hospital at once in a taxi, and I went to Vijayamama's house. We never go there, my mommy is very stuck up. She looks down on us because we live in the slums, but as soon as I told them what had happened, she came with me and took Sharad and Suresh to their house. And Vijayamama and I went to the hospital. I had a brief respite when she went round collecting the empty milk bottles, but she took up the thread with ease when she returned. Both of us had a brief apology of a meal, and she went on, her garrulity unabated, even while we ate. It was as if it were impossible for her to stop talking. Then suddenly, in the middle of a sentence, she fell asleep on the bed she had made for herself on the floor. I went to bed myself, marveling at her enormous resilience. But at night I heard her whimpering and moaning like a little animal. "Manda," I called out. "Manda." There was no reply, but the whimpering stopped. I went to her and saw that she was fast asleep, her blue skirt up to her waist exposing her striped, not very clean knickers. I covered her gently and the whimpering started again. "Manda, Manda," the eyes opened and looked fearfully at me. "What's wrong, child?" The eyes still looked blank. "Go to sleep, Manda, I'm here, go to sleep." Instantly, obediently, the eyes closed. She gave a sigh and fell asleep. I sat by her for a while. When I finally went to bed, I fell into one of those rambling, inconsequential dreams that are both irritating and exhausting. It was like a serial in which nothing happens and which never ends. I woke up totally unrefreshed, just in time to rouse Manda for the milk. There was a kind of ordinary, everyday cheerfulness about the clink of the bottles as Manda went about distributing them. She got mine last. We had our tea together, and her enjoyment of it communicated itself to me. We lingered over it and were, like two old soaks, relishing our second cup when Manda jumped up at the sound of a tinkling bell on the road. "That's the first," she called out as she ran onto the balcony. First what? It was the cry of Gunaputty Bapamoria that brought me the realization that it was Gunaputty today. The god was being carried home for installation. Manda came back, saying wistfully, "I was going to wear my green and yellow maxi today. Adji had told me I could wear it for Gunaputty." "There's another," then she stopped and said, "No, we have to go to the hospital. Oh well, let's do our work." She sounded like her grandmother as she said that. She looked like her grandmother as she set to work briskly. And Cassandra-like, I saw her future in an instant marriage. A drunkard for a husband, children, more children, poverty, ill health, cruelty, work, more work. By the time we were ready to leave, there was a steady flow of Gunaputties on the road in a bizarre multiplicity of shapes and sizes. We stood at the edge of the pavement, unable to cross because of a huge procession that was held up for a girl who rushed out of a building, a plate of offerings in her hands. The men around the idol stopped. One of them devoutly accepted the plate, showered the god with flowers, and broke the coconut at the edge of the pavement. Meanwhile, the dancers leading the procession went on dancing. I watched them, feeling detached and remote from the scene. The gyrating, cavorting men became flat cardboard figures, and the whole scene took on the color of absurdity. All this frenzied excitement for an elephant-trunked, pot-bellied, painted clay figure. If it was faith that created God who had said that. Was such an extravagant, boisterously loud statement of faith needed then to keep this God alive? The meaning of it somehow eluded me. It was like a word seen over and over again, becoming finally just a meaningless jumble. But the child by my side was untroubled by any thoughts or doubts. She watched the scene, her body tense with excitement and delight. As the procession moved on and we got ready to cross the road, Nilima, still in her nightdress, shouted from their balcony, "Where are you going, Auntie?" "To the hospital to see my father," Manda replied. And I thought of it. Nilima asked me a question in English, and Manda replied. She replied in Marathi, but she had understood the question. The Cassandra in me was snubbed. Manda was going to school, she would be educated, she would not be like her grandmother. It suddenly started raining, and Manda and I huddled together in the center of the bus shelter. The processions kept moving, and now the scene seemed schizophrenic. The men just around the god looked even more calm and peaceful as the rain drenched them, but the dancers, with the ochre powder they had daubed on their foreheads flowing down their faces, looked sinister. The rainwater racing into the gutters was stained red with the powder as well. It looked like the scene of a Holocaust. "Let's go on the upper deck," Manda said when the bus arrived. Her disappointment was acute when the conductor waved us back down. We had to stand, and swayed like drunkards when the bus lurched round corners. By the time we reached Sion, it had stopped raining. Manda, a child rooted in Bombay, moved through the traffic and the crowds with the same ease with which I had chalked out short cuts in Saptagiri. In the hospital, she led the way confidently to where Jija and Tara were sitting on a bench. Jija told us Rajaram had just recovered consciousness, but Tara scarcely raised her sodden face to look at us. Tara's brother, Vijay, materialized out of the mob and smiling confidently at me gave me Rajaram's bed and ward number. "You have to give the doctor that," he said. "Dr. Vyas." The nurse I asked for help seemed affronted by my question. How should I know? I don't know. Ask someone there. I was looking about helplessly for someone there when I noticed a man, a doctor obviously by his white coat, give me a quick glance, then another. Finally, he smiled. The smile identified him to me. Strange coincidence. Dr. Vyas, I am. I know you. You're Dinu's sister, Jaya, isn't it? I recognized you. I'm Mrs. Kulkarni now. I know I was to come for your wedding, but I couldn't. Dinu was furious. I couldn't help it. He shrugged, an extravagant gesture. Actually, your husband and I have a common friend, Mr. Agarwal. He's secretary in some ministry, isn't he? He's my neighbor. Mohan again, Mohan. And how's Dinu? I met him a year or two back. We met at a movie theater. How is he? Same old Dinu, eh? No, not the same old Dinu. A frightened man, afraid of loving, afraid of dying. Yes, the same old Dinu. 2 sons, hasn't he? 2 daughters. Yes, of course, 2 daughters. Smart chap Dinu, went there at the right time. Look at us rotting here. He looked at his watch, a quick, scarcely perceptible, busy man's gesture. I took the hint. I'm sorry I'm taking up your time. No, not at all. The minute I get in there, I'm caught up in my round. This gives me a minute's breathing space. I want to ask you a favor. Sure, what is it? I told him about Rajaram. He dropped his synthetic effusiveness, turned practical, and noted down the name and the numbers. Okay, not my unit actually, but I'll set my registrar onto it. No problem at all. Now that he could get away, he seemed reluctant to leave. You know, he began, and we had to move out of the unceasing flow of traffic that passed through the corridor. The minute I saw you, I remembered those days of ours in Dinu's flat. We had a great time there, Dinu, Shahani, and I. Do you remember we invited you to dinner once, you and that girl of Shahani? And yes, my sister, I think. I did remember. I remembered that girl of Shahani's, too. A sophisticated, good-looking girl who had made me feel clumsy, naive, unattractive. She was very bossy, Shahani's girl. Not surprising Shahani didn't marry her after all. You were very quiet that day, I remember. Couldn't get even a few words out of you. All the padding seemed to fall off him, and I saw once again a thin, wistful young man, pressing food on me, asking for my opinion on something, waiting for it anxiously as if it meant a lot to him, and I stiff, unresponsive, and Dada grinning amiably, but Dada had been angry later. Why did you behave so stupidly? And slipping into our childhood vocabulary, sitting there like a goonk. Poor Skinny, he was only trying to be friendly. Who cares? I had said loftily, ashamed of myself nevertheless, but unable to explain to Dada that I had felt vulnerable, assaulted by Skinny attentions. Dinu said you were shy. I thought. A pause. Oh well, another look, more obvious this time, at his watch. The wistful young man disappeared. His going saddened me, though his presence had made me uncomfortable. Perhaps I had disappointed him again. I should have said something light, indulged in that playful banter of the sex game. But without Mohan, I could not do it. Next time Dinu comes home, we must fix up something. Acutely, my wife and I are planning a trip to the States. Her 2 brothers are there. I'll look up Dinu if we do go. A white-coated procession of students was moving towards us. My God, he said, I must go. You won't forget this patient. No, don't worry about that. Give me a ring if there's any problem, okay? He moved away, his very back looking businesslike. Then he turned round swiftly and smiled at me. I'll be expecting your call, and drop in some time with your husband, of course. With your husband, of course. What did he mean by that? Was it impossible for me to relate to the world without Mohan? A husband is like a sheltering tree. Vanitamami, did you, without knowing it, speak the most profound truth I'm destined to hear in my life? What would he have done if I'd told him Mohan has left me? How would he have looked at me then? With pity, contempt, or, most frightening thought, without that barrier Mohan had raised between me and other men? Left me. My mind gave a sudden, painful lurch. No, this was nonsense, my writer, imagination, running away with me. Mohan would never leave me. He had gone back to our Churchgate home. He would be waiting there for me. Why hadn't I thought of that earlier? I should have gone there. I should have gone home. Why hadn't I done that? The hope died the moment I opened the door and entered the place. The desolate bang of the door as I closed it behind me, the few letters lying at my feet were enough to tell me that Mohan was not here. He had never been here. Why had I imagined that he would come here? I picked up the letters and put them on a small table in the hall, nodding with the vague indifference of a stranger the thick coat of dust that covered the table top. I moved about the house in the same way, with the mild curiosity of an acquaintance waiting for the family to return. A book lying on the bedside table, the fetid smell of rotting flowers in a vase, the gods denuded of their divinity with the lamp unlit, and the flowers dry and withered. None of these meant anything to me. It was like the typhoid I had suffered from an Ambigayon when we had gone there after Appa's death. That mundane bacteria-caused illness became a watershed in my life. There had seemed to be nothing in common between the girl who had lived in Saptagiri with her parents and the girl who came out of that illness knowing she had lost both her father and her home. And now nothing seemed to connect me to this place. Nothing bridged the chasm between this prowling woman and the woman who had lived here. I was conscious of a faint chagrin at her disappearance. Wasn't it I who had painfully, laboriously created her? Perhaps for that very reason she could not evade me entirely, and she appeared to me, only a faint wraith of herself, standing near this table, hand poised over a vase of flowers. What had she been doing with it? My mind burrowed through time and grasped at the occasion. A dinner, our first party in this house. Mohan moving about the room, as serious and solemn as the priest in Saptagiri Aji's house, preparing for the daily ritual of puja. Mohan moving the chairs and tables very slightly, rearranging the decorative bric-a-brac, lighting clumps of incense sticks in strategic corners, and then Mohan standing back, looking through narrowed eyes at the room and yes, rearranging the flowers I had arranged earlier. These flowers don't look right here somehow. Let's see how they look. On that table, just take this over there, Jaya. Ah, now I had it, the pose in which the first guest brought in by an excited ratty had caught them both, the man and the woman. Am I too early? No, not at all, we're all ready as you see. Except for the flowers. Oh, that, you know how the ladies are. Laughter in which the woman had joined in. Woman, why was I trying to fool myself? Why was I trying to protect myself? I had to admit it had been I who laughed. The weapons of the weak and the oppressed, Jaya. Dada had, with a grin, handed me the usual reassuring Freudian patter when I had consulted him about Rahul's bedwetting, which had started soon after Ratty's birth. Tears, tantrums, bedwetting, they're all part of the same guerrilla warfare. Dada had left out guile. It was not a pleasant thought, but I had to face it. Guile had been my weapon. It had been guile that had made me conceal my anger when they had said, ladies. And laughed. It had been guile that had made me laugh with them. It had been this same quality of deceit that had made me conceal my amusement that day when our guests had come in like the animals in Noah's Ark. I had thought 2 by 2, all of them with the same smiles, the same remarks. I had known then that I could not afford to laugh at something that was for Mohan a very solemn affair. I had already realized it by then, that I could never laugh at Mohan, at anything that mattered to Mohan. If I did so, it diminished him, and who wanted a dwarfed husband? Certainly I didn't. The bell rang stridently, startling me out of my thoughts. It was Damu, the next-door servant. Yes! His wife, one child on her hip, another tugging at her sari, watched me blankly from their door. The milky, ammoniac smell of fecundity came to me from their room. Bye, have you come back? Where were we supposed to have gone? What had I told Sadhu before sending him home? Bye, your phone has been ringing all the time from yesterday. It rings and rings, stops for a little time, then begins ringing again. Today morning also it was ringing like that. Oh, my wife just now told me how you have come, so I wanted to tell you. And yesterday, no, the day before that, when was it? He looked at his wife. And then the phone began ringing. I stood staring at the two of them. There, Damu said. Did I tell you? He looked faintly surprised as I continued to stand there, looking at them. Bye, he said in a loud voice, as if he thought I had suddenly gone deaf. The phone is ringing. I could hear it well enough. The sound echoed through the empty house, harsh and peremptory. There was something ominous about it. Suddenly it stopped. I took a deep breath and firmly closed the door on the two faces that looked like large question marks. Thank God. But it could have been Mohan. Yes, it must have been Mohan. I should have picked it up. It was Mohan trying to get in touch with me. The phone started ringing again. I rushed to pick it up this time, knowing even as I did so that it could not be Mohan. He did not know I was here. Yes, hello, that's right. Mrs. Jaya Kulkarni. Yes, trunk call, from where? Yes, I'm holding on. The voice that came was so shrill, so much out of control, that I could not recognize it as Rupa's, even when she said, Rupa here. Her words ran into one another, making her totally unintelligible, but I soon grasped the fact that she was charging me with something. My God, where have you been? Where have you people been? We've been trying to get you since yesterday. I've gone crazy sitting near this phone. I heard angry whispers, and then it was a shock speaking to me. He was more composed, but I could sense a scarcely restrained anger breaking through his enforced calm. Jaya, is Rahul there? Has he come to you? Rahul, I croaked out. Fear was gripping me by the throat. Listen, Rahul has gone away. He isn't here. Look, let me finish. We'd gone out yesterday and he said he would stay back. When we returned, he had gone. He's taken his bag with him. Is he there? I have to know. No. Okay then. Listen, Jaya, we've informed the police. We had to, but Mohan had better come here right away. Do you hear me? Ask Mohan to start at once. Rahul, I couldn't say any more. Look, Jaya, I'm sure he's okay. Don't get into a state. Just tell Mohan to come here at once. The operator's voice, comfortingly devoid of any feelings, said, 3 minutes. Operator, I want to go on. Don't cut me off. Operator, okay, Jaya, take down this number. This is the number of our hotel. Ring us up immediately if he turns up there, okay? And ask Mohan to start at once. Ratty, I was suddenly galvanized into life. I want to talk to Ratty. I heard an exasperated sigh. Well, okay. What is it, Mama? What is it? I was nonplussed. Are you all right? Of course, but I'm bored. That idiot of a Rahul, listen, Mama, yes, Uncle, only 1 minute when Daddy's coming, will you send my brown shoes with him? My shoes are, I put down the receiver. My body was dripping, wet little pools had formed in my slippers. The receiver stuck to my clammy palm. Mechanically, I wiped it with my sari before replacing it. The room was stifling hot. I switched on the fan and the sudden blast of air on my wet body made me shiver. I went to the window and gave it a push. It stuck. I banged it hard with my fist and it suddenly flew open. As if it had been waiting for this, a crow landed on the window with a frightening flap of its wings and cawed harshly at me. I shook the window and shoo-shooed it, but it clung on with a maddening pertinacity before abruptly flying off, croaking its idiotic caw as it went. My palm was hurting. I could see tiny red spots flecking the palm as the blood surfaced. I looked into my palm as if I might find some answers there, but there were none. All that I could see instead, even with my eyes closed, was a stark, nightmarish picture of an eerie caravan of skeletal vehicles. A caravan we had seen on the highway one early morning, each vehicle driven by a silent, masked, hooded figure, each driver looking straight ahead, each totally unaware, it seemed, of the vehicle ahead of him or the one behind, each vehicle moving in a chilly isolation. Where had that glossy, colored picture of a happy family vanished? The phone rang again. I looked at it in terror. I didn't want to pick it up, my whole being shrank from it. It went on ringing. What if it's a shock to tell me they've traced Rahul? Hello, yes, Mrs. Jaya Kulkarni, trunk call. Yes, I'm holding on. The same thing happening over again. Or had I imagined the last conversation? Was I going crazy? Rupa has Rahul, what? Who is it? Revati, what is Rahul? He isn't here, what with you? When did he? This morning, I must talk to him, I want to talk to him. No, I don't want to talk to your father, I want to talk to Rahul, Revati, Vasant. What do you mean he doesn't want to? Put him on the line. Rahul, is that you? How could you, Daddy? No, he isn't here, no, I DPN't no. Rahul, come home at once. You hear me, come home at once. No, come home, I said. Rahul, listen, I'm in the Dadar flat in Dadar, Makarand Mama's place. Dadar, Rahul, come home. He had put the phone down. I stood there dazed, looking foolishly at the receiver. Mummy, I could still hear Rahul's shrill cry. What had he been trying to say? I can't, Mummy, what had he been trying to tell me? Suddenly Rahul's first day in school came back to me. I remembered the eagerness with which he had set off, the willingness with which he had let go of my hand and followed the teacher into the classroom. Don't wait here, the teacher had said. Come back at 11. I had gone away but returned much before 11, tugged back by a pull that had almost hurt physically. And I had seen Rahul standing all by himself, his back to the wall, not crying, but with a look of such utter desolation on his face that a huge sob had torn itself involuntarily out of me, frightening me with its intensity. With an enormous effort, I had calmed myself, but my throat had ached intolerably, as if I had been screaming for hours. How was it, Rahul? I had asked him, trying to sound casual, when the teacher had let them out. All right, he had replied laconically, but that night he had woken up screaming, terrified by some nightmare. Mummy, I can't. Why did he leave Rupa and Ashok? Why did he go to Vasant? Why did he go to Saptagiri? It seemed amazing that I knew so little, almost nothing about my son. Whatever had given me the damn fool idea that once I became a mother, I would know my children through and through instinctively. Yes, this was what they had told me. You become a mother, and everything follows naturally and inevitably. Love, wisdom, understanding, and nobility. But now I felt as helpless to deal with this despairing boy as I had with the floppy-headed, vulnerable infant I had brought back from the hospital. I had the same fearful sense of being unable to cope, the same certainty of being a failure. Not able to feed your own child, AI had asked me contemptuously. I never heard of such a thing, but it had happened to me. I had not known how to suckle him, while he, it seemed, had not known how to suck either. He had lain beatifically asleep, and I, my breasts painfully gorged with milk, had tried to wake him to an awareness of hunger. And when he had finally woken up, crying, hungry, he had been unable to get at the milk. We had been like two clumsy amateurs, novices playing the roles of mother and child. And now, 15 years later, we were back at the same point. And there was Ratty mocking at me, jeering at me from behind the cardboard cutout figure of my daughter I had propped up, a girl, grave, serious, independent, understanding, a mother. Despairingly, I relinquished my halo. No, I had been unfit to be trusted with the entire responsibility of another human being. How had I dared to take it on? Mohan's wife, Rahul's and Ratty's. Mother, I can crawl into that hole, I had thought, a warm and safe hole. But here I was now prodded out of it by cruel, sharp staves. Smugness fell away from me, not in bits and pieces, but in mammoth, frightening chunks. It was like a house collapsed during the monsoon. There was something desolating about the ease with which what had seemed so substantial fell away, almost contemptuously, leaving behind an embarrassing nakedness. Why did he go to Vassant? Why did he refuse to talk to me? Why did he ring off that way? I struggled. For calmness, for coherent thought, there was something I had to do right now. Yes, of course, I had to ring up Rupa in a shock. I had to tell them that Rahul was safe, that my son who had been lost was found again. I put my head on the window and burst into tears. It was a weeping as painful and sudden as an unexpected bout of diarrhea. When I finally looked up, I saw two faces staring at me from a window across the courtyard. I was consumed with rage at the fascinated, titillated look on their faces. I banged the window and came back into the room. Resolutely, I picked up the receiver and booked a trunk call. While I waited, the room darkened. It seemed hours before I got through. Painfully, I went through my conversation with a shock. Yes, go ahead, that's right. Don't change your plans, the 14th is fine, yes. Yes, at last I had done. My throat was dry, I was thirsty, parched. I had to drink some water. I picked up the jug from the dining table and without thinking began to pour out the water into a glass. Then I noticed something floating on the surface. Scum. No, it was worse. Clump of dead ants clinging to one another in death. I put the jug down in terror. I couldn't stay here, no, not a moment more. I rushed out, slamming the door behind me, clattering down the stairs, even though I could hear the whine of the lift coming up. As I got out of the building, the rain came down in a torrent. I ran across the road to the bus shelter on the opposite pavement. The rain was pelting down, the raindrops hitting the road with immense force and immediately erupting into tiny foaming fountains. Millions of fountains, all of them suddenly dispersed like an unruly crowd by a blast of wind. And then there they were again, the same ones, it seemed, in the same places. I watched them in fascination, feeling my sari grow soggier and heavier as I stood there, exposed to the rain. And then I noticed I was not alone. A roasted peanuts man was crouching over his basket, his umbrella slanted against the rain, hiding all of him except his feet. Smoke from the little pot of coals drifted from under his umbrella. There were others, too. A burst of laughter turned my attention to them. Two young men and a girl. The girl had a face of remarkable beauty and delicacy, a slim body clad in jeans. On the whole, a beauty that was almost appalling in its perfection. As I watched, the girl snatched at a cigarette one of the men was smoking. He feigned unwillingness, then, yielding, put it between her parted, exquisitely tender lips. She took a deep drag, eyes closed in ecstasy, and the two men watched her with the detached interest of scientists observing the results of an experiment. One of them, I realized now, was openly fondling the girl's small breasts. She opened her eyes and the men laughed. She laughed too, a thin, ugly laugh that went on and on. The cigarette was roughly pulled away from her lips by the man. She tried to grab it. The man moved away. She got up, swayed, tottered, and leaned against the other man, held her and began roughly kneading at her breasts. The girl, unaware of it, still reached out for the cigarette. I could not control myself any longer. Stop, I cried out. Stop! What are you doing to her? They turned to me then, faces of blank astonishment. Not the girl, though, she was still grabbing at the cigarette. The men, too, after one look, went back to their game. The girl laughed as they gave her the cigarette. The Peanuts man, still crouching over his basket, seemed unaware of the game going on near him. I could see the faint gleam from his pot of coals as he blew at it and mumbled something. Don't, I cried out again, but it was no use. They could neither see me nor hear me. They were laughing. I ran out of the bus shelter into the heavy rain, and the laughter grew louder. It seemed to pursue me as I hobbled clumsily away from them, my wet sari flapping about my legs, impting me. Determinedly, I kept running away from the deadly game going on behind me, away from that laughter. Jaya, my eyes didn't seem to be able to focus properly. Mukta's face, dim and distant at first, became clearer, wavered, and was dim again. Are you awake? You're sweating. Look at that, you're wet all through. That's good. Your fever gone down. Here, let me wipe you. No, I feebly tugged at the towel with which she was wiping my face and arms, but she ignored me and methodically completed what she was doing. There, that's better. She tucked the towel like a bib under my chin. Now what will you have? You must have something, she said in response to the shake of my head. Milk, tea, coffee, water, I just want some water. She brought in a jug and was pouring out the water when I cried out, no, not that, that's dirty. Dirty, she gave me a puzzled look. There are ants in it. But I cleaned the jug myself this morning before filling it up. Look, it's quite clean. Here, I gulped half a glassful and fell back, exhausted with the effort. I woke up to hear voices that rose and fell periodically. SSSSHH, a voice said sternly when the other rose a little higher. Nilima, I called out. Auntie, how do you feel? Tai, are you awake? Are you all right? What's wrong with me? I asked the two girls who were looking down at me with identical expressions. Don't you remember? Nilima asked. You had high fever the whole night. You were delirious, she added with a faintly admiring air. The whole night. I tried to sit up. There was a buzzing in my ears. A feeling of total disorientation. Careful, Tai, Manda supported me. What's the time? Nearly 12. What do you want, Auntie? I looked at Nilima dumbly. What did I want? Shall I make you some tea? No, I'll make it, Auntie. Mummy told me to make you some when you woke up. No trouble at all, she said like an adult. Or shall I get you some Bornvita? No, tea. Right, I'll get it. Come on, Manda, don't just stand there, give me a hand. I felt euphoric, detached from everything, even my own body, as I listened to the two girls talking and laughing in the kitchen. Nilima brought in the tea and watched me, her face anxiously puckered as I took a sip. Is it okay? Good. There, and this stupid girl said I wasn't doing it right. She said you boil it all together, the water, milk, tea, leaves, sugar, everything. Now I know what I want, I said, interrupting Manda, who'd begun to say something. What? The two girls waited eagerly for me to give them something more to do. I want to have a bath, a cold bath. A bath, Tai, you can't have a bath when you're sick. I can, but it was too much of an effort to get up to do anything at all. I lay down and dozed off again. When I woke up, my head quite clear this time. Mukta was sitting near me reading, her book on her lap, her feet tucked under her. She felt my gaze on her, looked at me and smiled. You're feeling better. It was a statement, not a question. Yes, what's the time? About 4. She closed her book, neatly putting a marker in her page, and groped for her slippers under her chair. Have you been here all the time? No, Neela and Manda were here in the morning for a while. Don't you remember? Neela said she made you some tea. Oh, yes. The soot-covered blades of the fan rotated noisily. The sound hinted at some memory. What was it? I felt as if I had lost my yesterday, all my yesterdays. No, I hadn't really lost them, for this was not the terrifying blankness of amnesia, but the comforting assurance of having those yesterdays at a convenient arm's length. They had receded, but I could get them if I wanted to. I didn't need them, though, not now anyway. I want to have a bath. Can you manage? Do you need any help? No, I'm fine. The only thing wrong with me is, I sniffed warily, I stink. All that perspiration. As I got out of bed and began collecting my clothes, Mukta called out, Don't have a cold bath. Cold? I never have a cold bath. The girls told me you were talking of a cold bath this morning. The water was too hot. The thin trickle gave me a warning hiss before it was transformed into a cloud of steam. Hastily, I released the tap and a generous flow of warm water gushed out. I poured it over myself and came out feeling lightheaded and purified. Mukta had made the bed, and seeing me, she patted the pillow. Come on, lie down. I'll get you something to eat. This is real pampering. I smiled at her as she covered me with the blanket. But Mukta went away without replying, and I was left with the memory of Appa coming to me in the morning after a night of fever, whisking the mosquito curtains aside, feeling my forehead with the back of his hand, and saying, "There you are, quite well now. Up. Up, you lazy girl." "Jaya," I came back with a start. "Here, have some tea, and I have some toast for you. You were far away." She gave me the smile she had withheld earlier. I was thinking of my father. When he died, I kept saying to myself, I won't let him go, I won't let him be dead. I always spoke of him in the present tense. It couldn't last long. And now Mukta sat down on the bed near me. "What happened to you yesterday, Jaya? You gave us quite a scare." "Did I? What did I do?" "Don't you remember anything? Manda got tired of waiting for you and came to us. I was worried myself when you didn't turn up by 9. Then you came back sopping wet and went on ringing the bell of your place. You began banging on the door after a while. We couldn't get you to stop. Finally, I found your keys in your bag and opened the door for you. I got you to change and made you get into bed. I realized you had high fever. Even after we got you to bed, you wouldn't stop talking. You went on and on about Ratty, something about leave her alone. I realized you were delirious. You had a temperature of nearly 104. I gave you some aspirin, and what happened, Jaya? I don't know. I don't remember. I remember I was waiting for a bus at first. Then I went to Churchgate Station. I thought I'd catch a train. I got into a train. I can remember that. It started off and then it came back. The fan rotating noisily. The voices of the women, loud and cheerful. The faces, coming together, becoming a blur. Only one face, one woman, clear and distinct. A woman embroidering, intent on the job as if she was in the privacy of her home. The needles stabbing the taut cloth with business-like plunks as she sewed. Tiny stitches that formed a complicated design on a little girl's dress. And then, I felt sick. I felt I had to get out. I thought I would be suffocated. I'd die of suffocation in that compartment. I wanted to get out, but I felt as if people were trying to prevent me from getting out. I kept pushing, and all around there were hostile, unknown faces. Yes, that crowd, it frightened me. It seemed so hostile. I've never felt like that before. When we were children, my father was in the Hindu Mahasabha. And after Gandhi died, he had to go into hiding. You remember how they were persecuted then because of gods. And one day a mob came to loot our shop. My mother, we stayed above the shop. She kept crying, "My children will starve. Don't do it. My children will starve." She tried to stop them, but they didn't, not until they had cleaned out the shop. And they called themselves Gandhians, those men who were after men like my father. Poor Gandhi, he thought he could change human nature, but people don't change. People don't change. The words sounded like a knell to me. People don't change. What chance was there for anyone in that case? I was overcome by desolation. "What's the matter, Jaya? Is anything wrong?" Mukta looked at me intently. "No, nothing," I said. "Nothing." Mukta didn't question me further, but I had an uneasy feeling that she was watching me with an air of clinical detachment. Like the doctor Dada had sent me to after Ratty's birth, the doctor who had put me on the pill. She had listened with scrupulous attention to my symptoms, writing down everything I said in a neat hand. Cramps, she had written, and nausea, and with the same lack of expression on her face, loss of libido. Only later had I come to know that she had been writing a paper on the effects of the pill. Mukta now gave me the same impression. Only the data mattered to her, not my emotions. It was a relief when Nilima called her away. Manda came to me a little later, breathless with excitement, saying, "Tai, Aji is here, Aji has come. She says my Baba is better." Even Jija, unusually for her, was smiling. "You have helped us, Tax, we won't ever forget. I hope God will drive some sense into that Rajaram's head. Now maybe he will change and stop drinking, but people don't change." Mukta said so, and she was right. People don't change. Poor Jija. "I'll take this child home, give her a clean bath, and then bring her back, Tai," Jija was saying. "Look at your state, girl, look at your hair. I'm ashamed of you." "Would you like me to sleep here?" Mukta asked me later. "You mean you were here last night?" "All of us," Nilima grinned. "Mummy, Manda, we were quite a crowd. Where's Manda, Auntie?" "She's gone home. She'll be back. I'll be quite okay with Manda, Mukta. Don't bother about me today." "Sure. Quite sure. But call me if you need me." "I will, don't worry." I was frantic for them to go away, to leave me before I lost control and clung to Mukta, crying out, "Don't go, Mukta. Don't leave me alone." Suddenly the coming of the night filled me with terror. I couldn't bear the thought of being alone. I want to be alone. I want to be by myself. I'd often thought, frantic with all the demands made on me. I want solitude now. Not when I'm old and frightened of being alone, I'd thought. Now, here I was alone, but I refused to let my fears surface. I would not show Mukta anything was wrong. When Manda came, we locked ourselves in. The moment Manda fell asleep, I got out of bed and started moving about the house. How often I'd done this, peering into the kitchen to see that everything had been put away, looking in on Rahul and Ratty to see that they were asleep, making sure that the doors had been bolted. I want immortality, Maitre said. What do you want? Nilima had asked me. I'd been so sure until now. If someone had asked me, what do you want? I'd have given them an answer at once, just to live. To know that at the end of the day, my family and I are under a roof, safe, enclosed, in a secure world. If it's dark outside, what does it matter? I can close the door and windows, switch on the lights, and the darkness will recede. But now I knew that I could never shut out the darkness. The darkness had invaded me. The knowledge of what had happened to us was terrifying. Even if Mohan came back, even if this trouble blew over, could we go back to being what we were? Something had been lost, only an illusion maybe, but its loss had left such a rent in our lives that it seemed impossible for us to be able to mend it so that nothing showed. And yet I knew no life but this one. If Mohan returns, I thought, if only Rahul and Ratty come back, we can begin living afresh, but people don't change. Mukta was right, people don't change. I lay awake the whole night, my body tensed with the effort of listening for footsteps, for the doorbell to ring. But the night passed in silence, and it was with relief that I got out of bed and went to the balcony when the sounds outside told me the day had begun. I stood staring at the road as if the very intensity of my desire could conjure up the people I wanted to see on it. For one crazy moment, it did seem that Mohan and the children were coming towards me, running steadily, all three abreast. When they came closer, I saw they were a father and two daughters, running effortlessly and in unison, all three with healthy, trim bodies, relaxed faces. Then they came even closer, and I saw that one of the girls was running reluctantly. She stopped, panting, a hand to her side, her face agonized. The father said something angry while the other girl waited, a look of resignation on her face. Then the laggard resumed running, and I watched them until they moved round the corner, out of sight. I went inside only when Jija came in with the milk. While I made the tea, Jija went in to Manda, and I could hear their whispered colloquy. Nilima burst in a little later, asking me, "Did you hear us in the morning, Auntie? Did you hear us?" "Hear what?" "Our beautiful, peaceful family life, what else? Today it was Sadish, and Mai's been after Sadish to marry some girl, and today he said, 'No thank you, I'm going abroad.'" And Mai gave such a screech. "One son dead, the other running away, and not even a grandson, who'll cremate us when we're dead. Isn't that funny? Just imagine worrying about who'll cremate you." So I said, "Don't worry, Mai," I said, "I'll cremate you properly." And then she turned on me. "Grrr," Nilima made a fierce, growling sound. "A grandmother should be a nice, soft kind of person, don't you think so, Auntie?" Both mine were. But I bet no one could be as foul as Mai. "You know, Auntie, what I'm going to do one of these days." My look was encouragement enough for her to go on. "I'm going up on the terrace and whoosh." She flapped her arms about. "They'll find me down there on the pavement. Cusum at this window, flailing wildly in agony, crying out, 'I want to die, I want to die,' her face terrorized, her eyes blank, her nose running, dripping disgustingly on my hands as I grappled with her. The picture was as chaotic and fragmented in my memory as the scene had been when I had tried to hold her. "Don't you ever feel like killing yourself, Auntie? At your age, maybe. Not now, no, not now." And then I quoted, "Despair behind and death before doth cast such terror." Nilima, fascinated by those words, went away carrying them with her as if they were something precious, her anger quite forgotten. But when Mukta came to me, I asked her, "Mukta, do you think it's good for Nilima to stay here? She was talking of suicide this morning." "She often does. That's just talk. I know she'll never do it. She's too curious about life. She'll always want to know what happens next. But this constant hostility at home, this thing she has about she's tough, she can stand it. I've thought of it often, Jaya, don't think I haven't. And I know Neela needs a family. Just a mother would never be enough for her. Why else do you think I've stayed on here?" We sat in silence after that, Mukta and I, she reading a book, I doing nothing, as if we're both waiting for someone, something. But nothing happened. The room was quiet, not even the tick-tock of a clock to provide a soothing background to the silence. I had a queer feeling, as if there were nothing left in my life, nobody but this one person, this companion who offered me nothing of herself, not even her despair. I wondered at her apparent tranquility with the shadow of her dead husband behind her and the monstrous cloud of my looming over her daily life. Mukta, I began, anything to break the deadly silence. Why are you here? I mean, why haven't you gone to work today? I've taken leave. For me, the thought struck me for the first time. I couldn't leave you alone, could I? I'm okay now, you didn't have to. I've had some rest too. No problem. Jaya, when is Mohan returning? Mohan? Jaya, what is it? Something is wrong, isn't it? What is it? Mohan is, I don't know if he is, I think he has left me. Why? Why? I couldn't think of any answer to that. I could only stare at her face, and I saw the tiny hairs edging her upper lip, the beads of perspiration, the steady, unwavering eyes. I don't know, Mukta, I just don't know. Do you believe in rebirth, Mukta? Do you believe in many lives? I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. Why? I wish I did. It used to seem meaningless to me, just one futile life after another, each one a cipher ending in nothing, and the total, after so many births, again nothing. But now I feel it gives you a chance to redeem the failures of this life, doesn't it, if you have another life? But isn't being born again itself a failure? Isn't the real goal the success not to be born at all? I suppose so. I'd forgotten that. Then it means that there is no hope at all. I don't understand you, Jaya, and I don't know what's wrong between you and Mohan. I'll tell you what's wrong. I've failed him. He expected something from me, from his wife, and I've failed him. All these years I thought I was Mohan's wife. Now he tells me I was never that, not really. What am I going to do? What shall I do if he doesn't come back? Mukta, I was so confident, so sure of myself. I felt so superior to others, Kusum, yes, and you too. And now without Mohan, I don't know what I am. Jaya, Mukta's voice was urgent. She was gripping me by my shoulders, so firm a grip that I could not move, not even to wipe my streaming eyes. Jaya, is it because of Kamat? Kamat? I looked at her in surprise. No, what has Kamat to do with this? It's quite different. It's Mohan's job. He's done something. I hesitated, then said firmly. Dishonest, he's likely to get into serious trouble. But Mukta was not listening to me. She was still holding me. She was shaking me now, her normally pale face suffused with color. Then why did you leave him alone the day he died? You left him to die alone, didn't you? I saw you go up to his house that day. I heard you come down, and when I went up a little later, he was dead. You left him to die alone, didn't you? Why did you do it, Jaya? Why did you? I looked at her in surprise. Her face, it was like a child's when unfairly punished. Why was she angry? Why was she crying? Mukta, why does it matter so much to you? Matter to me. She let go of me. The blood had ebbed away from her face, leaving it as pale as before. I'll tell you why. I don't know what there was between you and him, nothing. Nothing between us. But after his death, nothing between me and Mohan either. We lived together, but there had been only emptiness between us. But for me, he was Aaron's friend. Aaron didn't have many friends, he was particular about them. And after Aaron died, it was Kamat who helped me, who gave me the courage to do my teacher's training, to take up a job. They were all against it, yes, even Abba. What will people say? He said. They will think we are refusing to look after you. And there was Nilima. They said I should stay at home and look after her. But I knew I had to get out. Yes, even for Nilima's sake, I was desperate to get out. And Kamat helped me. Some months before he died, he called me to his house. An untidy, chaotic room, books and magazines strewn all over. A large radio on the tall bookcase. I saw it as if for the first time, then I knew it was the last time, and I let it go. He told me he had had a heart attack, a minor one, but I have to be prepared, he said. I've lived alone for so many years, but dying alone is a different thing, he said. He joked about it, but I could see he was frightened. I want you to do something for me, he told me. I may not die for years, I may even outlive you, but if I do, and he gave me a key to his house. If you don't see me for some time, if you don't hear any sounds, just come in. I'll have left instructions for all eventualities. You don't have much to do, just ring up my nephew. I'll have written down his number. I haven't yet got down to writing things, I'm just talking about them, he said. One's own death always seems a fantasy, but I'll do it. And I'll have written it down, but remember this, they are not to wait for Gopal. The loneliness of a man facing his death, is there anything like it in this world? His pain filled this room, and we could both of us feel it. Mukta and I, the fellowship of pain seemed to bind us together. We were like two patients in a hospital, suffering from the same disease, lying on two adjacent beds. He was frightened of dying, Jaya. He was afraid of being alone. And you left him alone. You could have been with him, you could have stayed by his side, but you didn't, you just walked away. He could have been lying there for days. He could have just rotted there if he hadn't given me the keys if I hadn't gone there that day. He was a very lonely man, Jaya. Didn't you ever think of that? He was terribly lonely, especially after his son went away. I knew it now. Jaya, he had said, and I had run away. He tried to reach out to me in his loneliness, and it had frightened me. I'm Mohan's wife, I had thought. I'm only Mohan's wife, and I had run away. Mukta, he was already dead when I went in there. I couldn't have done anything. Even then, she said passionately, and I felt I had never known Mukta until then. I had thought her a symbol of negation, but look at her now, I told myself, look at her. You could have stayed. Was it because you were frightened of what Mohan would say? Mohan didn't know, he knew nothing, I never told him no, I said, at once firm and sure. It was not because of Mohan. Stumbling over the words, I suddenly realized it was not Mohan but marriage that had made me circumspect. Mukta looked at me with pity and said heavily, "What does it matter now, Jaya? Let it go." But I couldn't let it go that easily. Mukta went away and I was alone. One more night to go through, I thought, and I welcomed it. I needed to be alone now. While Manda mumbled in her sleep, I tried painfully to retrace my way back through the disorderly, chaotic sequence of events and non-events that made up my life. It was like looking through the eye-hole of the magic peep show of my childhood. Raja. Deco, Rani Deco, the man would call out enticingly. Come and see the kings and queens. And now I found myself looking at the picture of a girl, a child, wearing a dress with pockets for the first time, thrusting her hands in them, feeling heady with the excitement of finding unexpected resources within herself. That child was me. With this discovery came another thought. I will begin with her, with this child. Finished. Manda, broom in hand, stands near the table, looking inquiringly at the papers spread over it. So much writing. What is it, Ty? What is it? I begin to wonder myself. I had planned to begin with the child, hands in pockets, and come finally to the woman who so resentfully followed Mohan here. But it has not been that way. All this I've written, it's like one of those multicolored patchwork quilts the cockies made for any new baby in the family. So many bits and pieces, a crazy conglomeration of shapes, sizes, and colors put together. What have I achieved by writing this? As I stare at Manda, unable to give her any reply, the bell rings and she runs out. Ty, her shrill voice comes to me. Someone has come. The next moment she cries out, it's Dada. I rush to the door. It is Rahul and Vasant is with him. They are both grimy and travel-stained, each with a bag in his hand, Vasant with an additional one slung over his shoulder. Vasant grins at me, pleased by my surprise. So Rahul was right. He said you're here. I didn't believe him. You didn't hear properly, I said to him. Why should they be here? He had to force me to get off at Dadar. I wanted to get off at VT station and go to Churchgate from there. Isn't Mohan at home? No. In the bustle of arrival which Vasant and Manda create between them, Manda trying to take Vasant's bag from him, and Vasant saying, no, baby, leave it. Rahul goes silently inside. It gives me a pang to see the fear in his eyes, in his stealthy, not drawing attention to himself movements. I brought him myself, Vasant whispers after Rahul has gone in. I didn't want to send him alone. You did right, it's good you came. Manda, take that bag inside. Will you have some tea? Vasant, who has finally relinquished his bags with a loud sigh of relief, says, tea. Yes, I'd like a cup of good strong tea. We had tea in Kalyan, but that railway tea, pooh, I'm tired. We walked from the station. The taxis refused to come for this short distance. We got tired of pleading with them. We thought it's better to walk. When Vasant goes into the bathroom for a wash, Rahul and I are left together. We can't avoid each other any longer. Rahul looks at me as if expecting me to say something, but it is he who breaks the silence. Where, Daddy? He's gone to Delhi. Why? Some problem with his work. He'll tell you about it himself when he returns. Will he? When is he coming back? Tomorrow morning. I had a telegram last night. All well returning Friday morning, the telegram says. I've tried to interpret it many ways, but I just can't get beyond the triumphant trumpet call of all well. Mummy, Rahul begins. I know he wants to ask me something, so many things, but as if he suddenly remembers the questions I might ask him, he stops. We'll be going back home tomorrow after Daddy returns, I tell him. If you had come here tomorrow, you'd have found this place locked up. Noticing Rahul still looking at me hesitantly, something impels me to add, and don't worry about your returning this way, I mean. It's all right. Rupa and Ashok are a bit annoyed, but they'll forget. Now have your bath as soon as Vasant has done. I've sent Manda for some bread. We'll have breakfast as soon as you're ready. Rahul, his expression lightened, turns away from me. Well, his problems are over, I think resentfully. His father not here, his mother forgiving, what has he to worry about? Watching the easy, intimate talk between him and Vasan at breakfast, the resentment comes back. Why can't he be this way with me, with us? And suddenly, as I'm thinking this, something happens to me. I see the two of them, Rahul and Vasant, differently. They're not Vasant, Mohan's irresponsible younger brother, not Rahul, our difficult son, but just two persons at ease with each other, with themselves. What is it, Mummy? Rahul, feeling my gaze on him, asks. Nothing, I say, shaking my head. But it is not nothing. I've seen things differently. As if I've put my head down and looked at the world from between my legs, the world not just upside down but different. You look like a nun with that towel round your head, Rahul says, a little hesitantly. It looks like the things nuns wear. A coif, I offer him the word. Whatever, Rahul says, refusing it. I don't know about nun, but you look thinner, Vasant says. I wasn't well. Can you believe it? Nilima looked after me, Nilima and Manda. And Daddy. He'd already left by then. I can see Rahul is puzzled by the whole situation, but I leave it at that. You are coming to Saptagiri, aren't you, for Anna's annual ceremonies? Vasant asks me. Yes, we are, but I may have to go to Ambigayon first. Vanita Mommy is. Not well, my mother too. Ai? Rahul asks me with concern. What's wrong with her? Some of my resentment falls away as I think of Rahul's fondness for his grandmother. He will be glad to have her with us, I think. They go out a little later, Rahul and Vasant. Watching them from the balcony, I notice something buoyant about Rahul's walk as he sets off with his uncle. I feel unusually light myself, as if Rahul's buoyancy has communicated itself to me. Or is my feeling of lightness connected somehow to that odd view of Rahul and Vasant I had? As if in releasing them from the slots I'd put them in, I've released myself somehow. I go back in and begin to put away the papers I've been scribbling on these 2 days. For some reason, as I'm piling them up, a little scrap I've forgotten to use in this quilt forces itself on me. I think of the time when, for some reason I can't remember now, I'd suddenly walked out of home, unable to cope with anything, finding everything too much. I'd walked about, not knowing where I was going, up and down streets that were unknown to me. Once, in the midst of drab, ugly chawls and smelly streets, I'd come upon a garden that had pleased me with its unexpectedness. I had sat down on a bench, but within minutes a man had come down and sat beside me. I had scarcely noticed him until he had said, "Hello, sister," and smiled at me, a suggestive leer, like a villain in a Hindi movie. I'd got up then and resumed my aimless walking. Finally, totally exhausted, I'd gone back home. If they say anything at all, I had thought, I'll break down, I'll tell them I can't go on, I can't cope, I won't. But all that they had said had been, "Where have you been?" And it's late, I'm hungry. And I had felt as I had when the man had said, "Hello, sister," and smiled at me. I had wanted to laugh, I had thought I would burst into anguished sobs, but I had done neither. Quietly, I had gone into the kitchen and made something to eat. Why had I done that? Why had I suppressed that desperate woman? And now once again the man Nair and his family come back to me, that family that bound itself together and walked into the sea. We've been like that, all of us, bound by fear. Yes, I have been scared of breaking through that thin veneer of a happy family. What have I achieved by this writing? The thought occurs to me again as I look at the neat pile of papers. Well, I've achieved this. I'm not afraid anymore. The panic has gone. I'm Mohan's wife, I had thought, and cut off the bits of me that had refused to be Mohan's wife. Now I know that kind of a fragmentation is not possible. The child, hands in pockets, has been with me through the years. She is with me still. It was Daniel Defoe, that old Puritan, who called fiction a sort of lying. What did he say? Yes, a sort of lying that makes a great hole in the heart, at which by degrees a habit of lying enters in. You're right, Mr. Defoe, but who is to draw the line between fact and fiction? Our own little bits of fiction are precious to us. It's hard to let them go. But a hole in the heart, can we live with that? Two bullocks yoked together, that was how I saw the two of us the day we came here. Mohan and I. Now I reject that image. It's wrong. If I think of us in that way, I condemn myself to a lifetime of disbelief in ourselves. I've always thought, there's only one life, no chance of a reprieve, no second chances. But in this life itself there are so many crossroads, so many choices. Yathakasi Tatha Kuru. I had seen the Sanskrit words in Appa's diary after his death, and curious to know what they meant, and why Appa had written them down as if they meant something to him, I had asked Ramukaka about that line. It was Ramukaka who told me the line was from the Bhagavad Gita, the final words of Krishna's long sermon to Arjuna. Do as you desire. I thought it something of a cheat. Imagine the Lord, any master telling his disciple, do as you desire. What are prophets and masters for if not to tell you what to do? But now I understand. With this line, after all those millions of words of instruction, Krishna confers humanness on Arjuna. I have given you knowledge, now you make the choice. The choice is yours, do as you desire. As the meaning of this seeps into me, I find I have an answer to Jija's question if I ask it of myself, as she had done. With whom shall I be angry? With myself, of course. Mohan will be back. All well, his telegram says. Does he mean by this that we will go back to being as we were? Does it mean that, now that Mohan has sorted out his problem and no longer fears prosecution, joblessness, and disgrace, we can go back to our original positions? Does it mean that he will come back and give me a carefully edited version of what has happened, as he has done so often till now, and then ask me, what do you say, Jaya? Until today, this has been a rhetorical question. I have looked at his face for clues, and then given him the answer I know he wants. I have only to do this now, and authority will seep into Mohan once more. But it is no longer possible for me. If I have to plug that hole in the heart, I will have to speak, to listen. I will have to erase the silence between us. While studying Sanskrit drama, I'd learnt with a sense of outrage that its rigid rules did not permit women characters to speak Sanskrit. They had to use Prakrit, a language that had sounded to my ears like a baby's lisp. The anger I'd felt then comes back to me when I realize what I've been doing all these years. I have been speaking Prakrit myself, but why am I making myself the heroine of this story? Why do I presume that the understanding is mine alone? Isn't it possible that Mohan too means something more by all well than going back to where we were? People don't change, Mukta said. It is true. We don't change overnight. It's possible that we may not change even over long periods of time. But we can always hope. Without that, life would be impossible. And if there is anything I know now, it is this. Life has always to be made possible. Glossary. AI mother in Marathi, Ava mother in Kannada. A South Indian language, Batadawad is a fried savory made of potatoes and onions, banji. Sister in Hindi. Also used as a term of address, bhajias, a fried savory, bakris, a kind of bread patted out with the bare hand, Dasarath, a king from the epic Ramayana. Father of the hero, the divine Rama Ganapati Bappa Moria, a joyous chant hailing Ganapati. The elephant-headed god Ganapati festival of Ganapati. The festival is celebrated soon after the monsoons and is an important occasion in South India. Haldi, turmeric, and red powder used in Hindu religious ceremonies, and by married women as auspicious marks on the forehead. Hardalika, a day of fasting for all women in certain regions of South India. This comes a day before the Ganapati festival. Hindu, Mahasabha, a militant revivalist political organization. Its followers were considered to be pari to the conspiracy to assassinate Mahatma Gandhi, who was shot by a man called God's Jagannath, literally, Lord of the World. Specifically, the name of the god in the famous temple at Puri, on the east coast of India. To die under the wheels of the chariot in which the deity is taken in procession is considered by devotees to lead to salvation. Kajal Kole, or I Black Kumlam, see Haldi Ladus, a type of sweet lottie, a short stick, carried by policemen. Maitre, the scholarly wife pupil of the philosopher Yajnavalkya Mangalagori. Puja, a puja, QV, performed by married Hindu women on every Tuesday of a particular month for the first 5 years of their marriage. Marwari, a community of traders. A large number of moneylenders and pawnbrokers are Marwari's moksha, salvation, or release from rebirth. Madras, a term used in Indian dance, meaning the various gestures made with the hands, each of which is a symbol for a thing, an emotion. Puja, a ritualistic worship of the gods. Tulsi puja is a puja of the basil plant, worshipped by married Hindu women. Ram Nam Satya Hai, the chant that accompanies the dead on their last journey. Literally, God's name is the truth. Red flag, the Communist Party. Sachivalya, the building in Bombay in which are housed the ministries of the Maharashtra state government. Shira, a sweet maid of Semolina. Shiv Sena, a political party which sprang up in Bombay during the 1960s. Based on an appeal to regional and linguistic loyalties, Its main achievement in the early years was to weaken the hold of the Communist Party on the working population of Bombay SSC examination, the school leaving examination Thai, sister in Marathi. Also used as a term of address Yajnavalkya, an ancient Indian philosopher.